This is Jocko Podcast with Echo Charles and me, Jocko Willink. Good evening, Echo.
Good evening.
And tonight's podcast is a little bit different, but I think it has some good information in it. I was asked by two people who have outstanding podcasts of their own to sit down and have a conversation about leadership, and specifically leadership inside of Atrocities. And when we recorded it, I wasn't really expecting it, but we decided that we would all release it on our podcast platforms. So the two people that I recorded this with are Daniele Bolelli and Darryl Cooper. Unfortunately, Echo Charles was not present for this recording. And Daniele Bolelli, first of all, he's a history professor. He's a martial artist. He's an author. And yes, he's a podcaster. He has two podcasts that are great to listen to. They're great podcasts. One is called The Drunken Taoists, and the other one is History on Fire. They're great podcasts. They're entertaining podcasts. They're educational. They're, like I said, they're super informative. And the podcast that you're about to listen to is based on a couple other podcasts. The first one being by Daniele from his History on Fire podcast, number 32 Alpha, 32A for civilians out there. And the podcast is about the Sand Creek Massacre, which took place in present-day Kiowa County, Colorado on November 29th, 1864, where there were about somewhere between 70 and 170 Cheyenne Arapaho Indians, mostly women and children, who were slaughtered by a 675-man force of the Colorado U.S. Volunteer Cavalry. Brutal situation, horrible situation, and like I said, Daniele Bolelli talks about that on his History on Fire podcast, number 32 Alpha. The other podcast this is related to is from Darryl Cooper's podcast. His podcast is called the Martyr Made Podcast, and specifically podcast number 10. It's about the My Lai Massacre, and that is when about 500 innocent civilians, again, mostly women and children, were murdered, and many also raped and mutilated by U.S. soldiers in Vietnam. Darryl Cooper is also an incredible podcaster. He's a great storyteller, and he goes through ridiculous, I would say, depths to give all perspectives of a story. And his podcast, Martyr Made, is fantastic. He doesn't put them out as often as I wish he would, but the podcasts are great. The one on the Palestinian-Israeli conflict that he started, his first 6 podcasts on Martyr Made, that's what it's about, and they're fantastic. And he's a veteran of the U.S. Navy. He's a wrestler. He's a jiu-jitsu player, and he's really smart, well-read person, and great to listen to. And then the last podcast is my own podcast, Jocko Podcast number 31, 4 Hours in My Lai, which is when I did an assessment of a book by that name and talked about that same massacre in Vietnam. And in this podcast that you're about to listen to, the three of us discuss how these atrocities come about and what can be done to prevent them in the future. So that's the laydown, and here it is.
Daniele, Jocko, everybody, I'm here. Darryl Cooper, talking to two of my favorite people. We're going to go some dark places today. You've listened to the last two podcasts that Daniele and I have put out, and maybe about 60% of the podcast that Jocko's put out, then you know we're gonna dive into some dark places. I want to get it started pretty quick. We've been talking beforehand, so let's just jump right into it. Daniele and I recently did a series that we cooperated on where he covered the Sand Creek Massacre in 1864. Some U.S. Army soldiers massacred some Native Americans in Colorado. I did the My Lai massacre, similar situation 104 years later in the jungles of Vietnam. We're fortunate enough to be here with Jocko. If you don't know who Jocko is, I guess we'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself just a little bit.
Yeah, my name is Jocko Willink. I was in the military for 20 years and retired in 2010. And now I've written a couple books and have a podcast called Jocko Podcast because I don't get really creative with the names of things. So
Jocko's pretty direct about things. So he's also kind of humble. Jocko was a Navy SEAL commander in Iraq. He led Task Force Bruiser, is that right? Into
Task Unit Bruiser,
Unit Bruiser into the Battle of Ramadi. Which, if you know anything about the war in Iraq, the Battle of Ramadi and the Battle of Fallujah are probably the two big fights that get mentioned the most. But whereas Fallujah was more of a direct assault on the city after the insurgents captured and tortured and mutilated some U.S. contractors, and Bush ordered the Marines to retaliate. The Battle of Ramadi was a little bit different. Jocko's going to talk a little bit about the environment that they went into going into it. And so he's got some military experience, not only being on the ground, but of leading men in battle in an environment, an insurgent war, where you've got different groups of people, different sects, the Sunni and the Shia in Iraq, who are fighting a bloody battle that we're in the middle of, but who we can't engage with on their level. These are people who are fighting a very, very dirty and ugly war against one another and against us if they get their hands on us. As Americans, going into a war like that, we've got a different mentality. We try to avoid behaving in ways that dishonor us, and it's something that Jocko takes very seriously, and he had to lead men into combat under those conditions. So we're going to talk about that. It was 2006, April of 2006, when you led your men into Ramadi to begin with. Is that right?
yes, yeah, that's what it was.
So shortly before that, a couple months before, the Golden Dome of the Al-Askari Mosque was blown up by Al-Qaeda in Iraq. Zarqawi's people. This is an ancient Shia mosque, one of the most sacred places to Shia Islam.
Well, interestingly, Ramadi is primarily Sunni. In fact, it's almost all Sunni. And interestingly, the majority of the military forces in Iraq, especially the army, were Shia. And so you had to kind of diffuse that tension on a pretty regular basis to make sure that there weren't, reprisal killings. And there was definitely some level of mistrust between the Sunnis that lived there in the city and the Shia military. But it was absolutely clear that the Sunnis that lived in Ramadi, the local Sunnis that lived in Ramadi, much preferred the Shia army soldiers to the insurgents that were there, that were being run by Al-Qaeda in Iraq, by Zarqawi and the likes. And because what they were doing was just savagery. And, everything that you hear about, they were skinning people alive, they were beheading whole families, they were torturing, raping, and murdering the local populace to get them to support them as much as they could through pure terror. And so the local populace, even though they might not have been, they're basically going with who's their worst enemy at the time. Their worst enemy at the time was, without question, Al-Qaeda in Iraq. And so the Shia army that was there to fight Al-Qaeda in Iraq, the Sunnis were generally in support of what the army was doing there. So it was a little bit different than in areas like Sadr City, where the Shias in Sadr City were very active. There's an active fight going on against coalition forces. So yeah, it's definitely a tricky situation.
Yeah. When you roll into a situation like that with American soldiers, where both sides are engaged in just a hurricane of atrocities across the country, and where the people who are there, they might be looking to you for safety, or I guess that's a question I would have. They probably, under the circumstances, were the people in the city, they probably were looking to you to protect them. Absolutely.
And just before we showed up, just to kind of paint this as clear as I can, and I forget the exact numbers, and I apologize for that, but just before we showed up, the insurgents murdered, it was something like 700, 8, 9, 10 of the leading tribal sheikhs in the area. And the tribal sheikhs that survived that left. They left. And so that just put the whole city, under such a grip of fear of the insurgents that they just basically surrendered as much as you can surrender, which means, hey, if you want to come and stay at my house and you want to sit in my backyard and launch mortars at the coalition forces, we're not going to say anything to you because we want to live. We don't want to get killed. And that's what you end up with. You end up with passive support. And that's what the locals were doing. They were passively supporting the insurgents only because they didn't want to have their heads cut off. And so as and this was a brilliant strategy that was spearheaded by the 11 AD, the Ready First Brigade of the 1st Armored Division, run by a guy named Colonel Sean McFarland, who ended up being a general, and he's a brilliant guy and a great leader. But his attitude, which he actually got from H.R. McMaster, which he had employed up in Talifar, and 11 AD had actually gone into Talifar and gotten a turnover and understood what they had done up in Talifar. And the strategy was called Seize, Clear, Hold, and Build, which was go into these enemy-controlled territories, these enemy-controlled neighborhoods, and stay there. And so that's what the strategy was. And that was a lot different than the strategy that had been being used up until this point, not just in Ramadi, but in all of Iraq.
Is that a strategy that's, it almost seems like, reading about Ramadi from the outside as somebody who's never been in combat, it almost seems like the goal was to go in there and establish your dominance over the city, almost to show the people of the city that you don't have to be afraid of these people because they're afraid of us. And we have freedom in this city. We can take our Humvees and patrol these streets, and they're not going to come out and fight us because they're afraid of us, and so you don't have to fear them. It almost seems like that was the goal there.
Yeah, I wouldn't use the word dominance because we weren't trying to dominate the local populace.
Right.
We were trying to provide security for the local populace,
sure.
and obviously that's a big difference because when you start having an attitude of we're going to dominate the local populace, that's just a small step in the wrong direction. Right? That's a small step in the wrong direction. Sure. Whereas saying, hey, we're here to protect and secure and stabilize the local populace, that is what we were doing.
Yeah, I think it took us maybe a little bit longer than we wish it would have to recognize that before you can do anything counterinsurgency, you have to provide security to the people.
100%.
If you're not leaving them a choice, then they're going to provide that passive support, right?
And I think that's one of the issues that shows up with the kind of episodes we did, both the story of Sun Creek and the story of My Lai. You have a situation in which suddenly some guys begin to look everybody on the quote-unquote other side as belonging to the same field. Why? Because they are all Cheyenne or they are all Vietnamese. There's no sense that they are not all in the same boat. Some people are your allies, some people are your enemies, some people are exactly what you were saying, stuck in between where I kind of have to cooperate with your enemies, not because I want to, but because I really have no other choice. And you cannot treat all of them the same way. And so I think the dilemma that you are facing, this idea of having to figure out, okay, there are people that we're here to protect. Those are not the people we're going after. There are other people that we need to take care of. That seems to be one of the things that was very much missing, that nuance, that ability to look at people who may look the same way, but they are not the same people, to look at them with different eyes. That seemed to be really what was missing in some of the stories that we treated, where the guys who did what they did is because to them is like, an Indian is an Indian, Vietnamese is Vietnamese, whatever. It's all the same, doesn't really matter. And I think is like, how do you see what leads to that point on one side, and vice versa? What is that you guys were doing to make sure that it doesn't go to that point where your guys would not make that switch to that frame of mind and keep their priorities very clear in terms of differentiating in terms of who they are facing?
And real quick, can I just add a supplement to that question, because it's kind of what I wanted to ask as well, is how do you train your men and lead your men in such a way that they can pull the trigger when they have to, and when civilians get killed accidentally, that doesn't destroy them emotionally, right? There's got to be some kind of separation there without having them fully enter over into that mindset that Daniele's talking about, where you're just dehumanizing the enemy altogether. When you have to lead your men in a situation like that, like how did you deal with that?
Yeah, well, this is leadership.
Yeah,
this is leadership, and this is leadership in war. And this is, this question that you're asking is one of the largest possible questions you could ask about combat leadership. And I appreciate that you guys keep referring to me, but I had 35 or 40 SEALs there, depending on the time, and there was 5,600 soldiers and Marines that were there that were discriminating targets every single day, and that had outstanding leadership, that were making sure that guys with less training than my guys that were younger than my guys that had a tougher job than my guys in many cases, would still discriminate targets and make sure that they were engaging enemy personnel and not civilians. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm certainly not saying that civilians didn't get killed, because civilians got killed, and it's an awful thing, and it's one of the things I talk about all the time. If you go to war and you're not comfortable with the fact that you're going to kill innocent people, then you probably don't have the will to go to war, and maybe what you're going to war for doesn't meet the threshold of what warrants a war. Mm-hmm. And if that's what the conclusion you come to, that's fine. Let's hope you come to it before you're on the ground and blood has been spilled. But there's so many little things that we'd cover to talk about. I mean, just even the distinction that I just made between, like, hey, we're going in there to dominate. That's a little step. It's one little step, and using that word and then following it up, and we talked a little bit about this, and Darryl, I was listening to your podcast about the My Lai massacre, and I did one about it as well. And one of the things that I talked about in pretty great depth, because for me, I had incredible correlation between what happened in My Lai and what I sometimes saw happen overseas, and that was with the intelligence that you're receiving. And you could see, and I pointed it out in my podcast, and I don't remember like all the exact verbiage, but at the senior levels of intelligence, the intelligence report was that Pinkville, or the area of Pinkville, or My Lai, whatever you want to call it, My Lai 4, that area, the initial intelligence was, suspected Vietnamese suspected Viet Cong area. Could be possible, Viet Cong. And then it went down one level in the chain of command. And the next people that briefed it was, just a little bit stronger. It was, Viet Cong area, Viet Cong controlled area. And then it went down one more level, and it was Viet Cong headquarters area. And then it got down to, this is all Viet Cong. And then they threw in the fact that, the people going to the market, right? It's market day. That started off as, hey, some people will be at the market on this day. And by the time it got to the guys on the ground, it was everyone that's good is going to be at the market. Everyone that's still in the village is going to be bad. They're going to be VC. And, well, you know what to do with VC.
Yeah.
What he says is really interesting in terms of just human communication. How in that case, before you even go about Americans and Vietnamese, you even discuss war or just the basics of human communication, how sometimes starting 1 degree off, before you know it, if you keep it long enough, that 1 degree off took you so far off course from the reality they are trying to describe that the words which is kind of like playing telephone, when you whisper something in the other person's ear, it doesn't sound that different from what you just heard, but you just tweak it just tiny bit. By the time you're down 20 people, the message has no similarity whatsoever to the original one. And it seems like that I think we do it all the time in daily life, but nobody dies as a result of it. Whereas in that kind of scenario, people do die. The consequences are so much more dramatic as a result of that.
And what's interesting is, and Darryl, you kind of brought up in your podcast, and you did as well, mm-hmm. Daniele, is how does this happen, mm-hmm. right? How does this happen? Because if you take a normal human being and you drop them into the middle of that thing, they look around and they go, what the hell's happening? Mm-hmm. Which is actually what happened when Hugh Thompson came in his helicopter. He dropped into this situation and said, what the hell's going on here? This is totally wrong. But as you're getting there, if you're not on that
mm-hmm.
trip, if you're not on that train as it's going off the rails, You don't recognize it. And that's why one thing I talk about all the time from a leadership perspective is the ability to detach from all the chaos and all the mayhem that's happening. Because if you don't have the ability to detach from that chaos, you're in it. And if you're in the chaos as a leader, you don't see the mayhem that's happening. And so it's so important for a leader in the business world, but certainly in the military, to be able, or in any leadership position, to be able to step back and observe what's actually happening from a detached perspective, because otherwise you're in the storm, and that is not a good place to be as a leader.
You've got to have rules for how you're going to behave while you're going into it, because if you just, if you're going to react to everything on the ground once you arrive, it's always more expedient to just shoot them. At the time, it's always easier and safer probably to just do the easy thing and be violent or whatever. So you have to have rules going into it. Did you have something you want to say?
Yeah, one thing that I want, because the point he brings up is super interesting, but I think essentially what you're saying is that the person in a position of leadership needs to be a Zen master. They need to be in the middle of emotions that clearly are affecting everyone around them, and they are getting bombarded with those emotions. They need to be completely detached from this stuff. It makes perfect sense. How do you do it? Because it's a hell of a lot easier said than done, clearly. And how do people even train to get to that place?
So, well, for one thing, when I was running the training for the West Coast SEAL teams, I would fire up that training to a point that there was total temptation for the leaders to get wrapped into the scenarios that I was developing for them. There'd be total mayhem, and if they let it happen, they would get wrapped up in these horrible scenarios mentally, emotionally. Yep. They'd be mad. They'd be mad at me because I was the guy that was running the training. They'd be mad at the opposing force role players. They'd be mad at their guys. They'd start yelling and screaming. They'd make bad decisions, and I wanted them to get there, because I wanted them to see what happens when you get wrapped up in this stuff emotionally. So, and then what I would do is teach them that they have certain, what I would call red flags, certain signals that they need to learn how to pick up. Yeah. If you feel yourself start raising your voice, well, then that probably indicates that you might be getting emotional. If you're breathing heavy, if your fists are clenched, there's all these things that you start to recognize. And once you can recognize them and you say, oh, okay, I'm starting to get emotional right now, need to step back. Now, interestingly, what I would often do, and an easy methodology for training these guys was, first of all, stop looking down the sights of your weapon. Like you're not allowed to. And we'd give a leader a stick if we had to and take their gun away so that they weren't going to be shooting. They weren't going to be wrapped up in that tactical situation. And literally put that weapon at high port and step back away from the firing line. Callie is with his M16 gunning people down. He's completely wrapped up in what's happening. Medina's yelling and screaming. I mean, I talk about this with police forces as well. If you want to hear people, go listen to some of the bad shootings that you hear. And police have a incredibly hard job. They need way more training, but go listen to some of those shootings that take place and listen to the pitch and the tone of the officer. And what are they doing? They're saying, get down, get down, get down. They're completely emotional. Right. And that emotion is going to drive bad decision making. So you have to learn how to detach. The way you do it is, and the way I would initially teach guys to do it, is by physically putting their weapon at high port, stepping back away from the actual firing line, and moving their head around and looking around. So the story I wrote about in Extreme Ownership is, I had the Delta platoon commander, who's a great guy, smart guy, Ivy League, Naval Academy, and just a brilliant guy, great guy. And we were doing some training, and it was in Humvees, and we were doing immediate action drills in Humvees. So you're out in the desert, and your targets pop up, and you engage the targets. It's like being mini tank commanders, and you've got 5 vehicles, and you've got to maneuver them on the battlefield while they provide cover fire for each other. And it's a little bit chaotic. There's big machine gun shooting, and when I was going with him, and I was sitting behind him observing him do this, and every time the shooting would start, he would kind of lock up, right? He'd kind of lock up. There's so much happening that he wasn't processing it quick enough. And so I took a Sharpie magic marker and I wrote down on the window in front of his face. I wrote, okay, here's what I want you to do. When the shooting starts, I want you to do this. 1, relax. 2, look around. 3, make a call. And at that time, I hadn't thought through this stuff as much as I have now because I've been doing it for much longer. But what I was telling him to do was, detach from what's happening. Mm-hmm. And the way you do that is you relax, you look around, and then you get on the radio and you make a call. And the next run, I watched him and I was sitting behind him and I'm looking over his shoulder. And once the shooting starts, you can't hear anything. So I'm just watching him, and I see him. The shooting starts and I see him look at the window and I see him take a deep breath and exhale. And I was like, okay, he just relaxed. And I see his head start to turn and I realized, okay, now he's looking around. And those 2 simple items were enough to make him detach from all that chaos, actually assess what is happening, and then make a good decision. Mm-hmm. And so that is one of the most important things that you can train a leader to do.
Sounds like coaching a jiu-jitsu white belt. First thing you tell them, they're on the ground getting beat on, and they the first thing you tell them, breathe.
Yeah.
Just breathe. Yeah. Relax. Until you can do that, then nothing's going to work.
Yeah, it's one of those things too. People talk about like breathing exercises. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I would instinctively do, and it's another thing that I would train my guys to do, was like, you don't panic on the radio. You don't yell on the radio. You don't scream on the radio. No matter what's going on, when you get on the radio, you say, Bruiser 1-6, this is Bruiser, over. I mean, that's what you do. And in order to do that, you have to relax. So it forces you, if you're not going to sound panicked on the radio, which if you sound panicked on the radio and your team hears it, guess what? You're going to have panic going on. So you have to, it's another method to detach. So when you hear your voice getting excited, when you read about Lieutenant Callie yelling and you hear about Medina yelling, Callie started yelling likely because Medina was yelling at him. And now that's what happens. We're just sending that panic through the chain of command, and it's a horrible thing.
I think what's fascinating about it is that the parallels, even to the scenario you're describing, is something that 99% of the people listening, 99% of the human beings will never have to deal with, because they're never going to be in combat with bullets flying all around them and all of that. And yet, it's easy to forget that the same dynamics are at play in most people's lives in ways that they may be able to recognize with less extreme consequences. But like when you're a parent and you have your kids going wild and suddenly you find yourself, raising your voice and starting to yell at them. And not because there's a time and a place. Sometimes it's the right thing to do is to kind of cool them on their stuff in harsh ways. But there's a difference between raising your voice with an intent and raising your voice because you're losing it and you're getting overly emotional and you're getting angry. And kids realize it and they will hear you. They will see how you are losing your stuff. They will see how you are less of a credible presence in their life, that they not can count on you that way because you are wrapped in your own emotions. And, they press a little button and you go off. Sometimes they'll press that button because they enjoy seeing you go off. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they'll press that. But, the point is you're not a good leader as a parent at that point.
And it's the same thing. My company now, we work with businesses all over the world, and it's the same exact thing. And I teach the same exact thing. If you're starting to get mad at your employee, you're starting to get mad at your subordinates, if you're starting to get mad at your boss, what should you be doing as a good leader? You should be detaching, taking a step back. I've told people, hey, if you start feeling that way, you stand up from the meeting table. Just no one's going to say, hey, what are you doing? You just, stand up, stretch out, step back away. People are having a heated argument and you start getting involved in it. Instead of getting involved in it, take a step back. By the way, when you do that, you look like a tactical genius because everyone else is starting to lose their temper. Yep. They're starting to say things that they shouldn't say, and you're the one that's listening. I just covered a book, and just like a little thing is if you're talking, I'm going to let you talk, because if I let you talk, I know twice as much as you. I know everything that you know, and I know everything that I know. So I'm going to win that tactical situation.
I want to come back to what you were just saying, Daniele, about leadership as a parent. Yeah. It ties into something he was talking about a few minutes ago with like a police officer who's panicking. We were mentioning this on the car ride over here about police shootings. Like more often than not, what you see is that They're the result of incompetence. They're the result of a socially inept cop who can't manage the situation, and it's not an easy situation to manage. You've got a potentially dangerous person, you don't know them, and maybe they're lightly resisting you just verbally, and you've got to take control of that situation. Well, unless you're an exceptionally competent and confident person, maybe the only tool you have to bring that person under control is your baton or whatever it is. And you get the impression in Vietnam, especially once you get up to 68, 69, where, they're starting to just throw junior officers in right out of, ROTC and just throwing them into combat. And you hear stories about, officers getting fragged. You start to hear stories about...
Cali washed out of OCS three
times, right? And you get these people now into a situation where you have a military unit that recognizes their incompetent leadership, and they're scared. They feel incompetent themselves as a unit, and you get them into a place where, and maybe this is something that you can contrast really well because you led primarily SEALs and Marines, right?
Well, SEALs.
Okay, just SEALs.
Yeah.
But you worked a lot with Marines.
We worked a lot with Marines and Army soldiers as well.
Okay, yeah. And
actually, mostly there's one battalion of Marines inside Ramadi.
Okay.
The 3-8 Marines. Awesome.
When you're dealing with the American military today, and I know, this is something that gets lost on a lot of people, is that as highly trained and motivated and all those things as our special forces are, they're very specialized. You guys are, trained for very, very specific, intense missions and stuff. But you go pull an average Ranger or Marine or something or infantryman, you put them in combat with good leadership, and that is an unbelievably effective soldier. American soldiers today are all volunteer force. These are incredibly well-trained and motivated people if if they have the proper leadership. When you get back into a situation like that with Vietnam, where you get a whole unit in that situation that cop's in, where they're in maybe a village, they don't exactly know how to handle this situation without resorting to lethal force, and they start to feel threatened and everything runs off the rails. It's unrealistic to expect, just like you're a happily married man and you don't want to cheat on your wife, then when you're off on a business trip, after you've had a few drinks with the coworker that's on travel with you, it seems innocuous, maybe it's totally innocent at the time. Don't go upstairs to the hotel to watch a movie, because if you get to that point, you're just putting yourself in a terrible position, right? And in that military context, the idea that all of the built-up momentum behind something like My Lai, the idea that you're going to get right up to that moment on March 16th, 1968, where the only thing that's stopping it from happening is a few pounds of trigger pull. That's the last bit of, that's your last opportunity to avert this catastrophe, is just that few pounds of trigger pull. Good luck with that. That's something that you can't let it get to that point. And that was something that, and then I'll let you guys take it over, but I wanted to talk about something that it was fascinating to me that you picked up on. As soon as I said the word established dominance on the streets of Ramadi, you reacted against that. And you're right, that's incredibly important. And it ties into what you were just talking about you would make people either back away from the situation or stop looking down the sights of their gun. Because when you're looking at a person down the sights of your gun, it's your framing of the situation. And you haven't put down their gun, and now it's just a person. It's not a target. It's not anything like that. If you got a bunch of people going into Ramadi and they're thinking in terms of our job is to go establish dominance on the streets of this city, well, you're framing that in a way that, under the right circumstances, could lead to trouble.
Yeah.
And so framing, it seems like, is what you're talking about.
And I also want to make it perfectly clear that if the soldiers, Marines, SEALs that we worked with in the Battle of Ramadi, if they didn't dominate the street as we moved down it, we would we'd be killed. So the job is even harder than I made it out to be, because I wouldn't want to use the word dominate the city of Ramadi, but you're damn right. We're going to dominate the space that we go into, and we're going to do that by being very, very aggressive. Mm. And so there is this fine line. And by the way, you'd kick a door in Ramadi, and there's gunfire in the street that you're on. You'd kick in a door, and there would be a mom and a dad and a couple kids, and there'd be a normal household with green grass and a soccer balls, and that would happen. That's what the city was filled with. And so the fact that these guys, you know, were able to flip that switch over and over and over again was amazing, and it's a testament to the military forces that we have and to the leadership. I want to give equal credit to both, but to your point about, hey, you know, My Lai, these were draftees, there was hundreds of thousands of draftees that went over there and did an incredible job.
Sure.
They were well led, that stood up when the wrong things were happening. So this was a horrible scenario.
Daniele, let's follow up on that then. I mean, that's what's the difference? Like, what happens? Mm-hmm. You didn't get all the psychopaths in the army and round them up into one unit, right? By all accounts, the guys at My Lai, they were the type of people that when the folks back in Kansas heard about what happened, they couldn't believe that little Johnny would ever do anything like that.
And same thing at Sand Creek.
Right.
Same thing.
And so, because you're right, we were talking about this on the way too. Something today, it is, we have something like Abu Ghraib happens. It's a terrible situation. A lot of bad things went on there. The idea, though, that an entire company of American soldiers would go into an Iraqi village and wipe out 500 innocent people, that is inconceivable today, in the sense that so many things would have to go wrong and break down and degrade and degenerate in the American military for that to have happened, that it seems like a completely different moral universe. And
well, you look at what the chain of events that led to My Lai. It was those, and if any of those chain of events, anywhere along that chain of events could have broken that whole chain. You know, Lieutenant Calley could have gotten killed in the minefield, and now you could have had someone else came in that was a better leader and didn't have a Napoleon complex and was able to stand up morally to other people. There's so many things that could have changed on that, you know, that could have changed that whole scenario. The most powerful one being a different leader. Same thing at Sand Creek. Different leader, that actually never would have happened.
Right.
Absolutely. Never would have happened.
Yeah, and in fact, you do see that. You know, you see all the guys under Silas Saul, like unanimously, they all agree with him, whereas all the guys with Chivington, it's like clearly there's a leadership element where the average guy in those units is heavily influenced by who's setting an example for them. And that is one of the things that interests me about human nature, that, you know, one of the things, because we're discussing, like, does that mean that human being, you know, one of the things you hear a lot is, are human beings just evil by nature? And it's like, no, they're not evil. The majority of people are not. There are, of course, the exceptions. There is that whatever small percentage, but the majority of human beings are not evil. The problem is that the majority of human beings are extremely easily influenced. Like, their moral compass can range in so many different directions, that under right leadership, they will be awesome human beings. Under wrong leadership, it's not that hard for them to start sliding down a really dark direction. So to me, it kind of is a matter of weakness more than evil. You know, it's not that these guys are complete psychopath where, you know, you have dinner with them and they are nice people and they help the old lady cross the street. And yet the degree, while they may have good intentions don't go too far without crazy discipline, strong willpower, a lot of the qualities that allow you to keep those good intentions real under heavy emotional pressure, where it doesn't all fly out the window and it's like, I don't know what happened, I just lost my mind, or hey, they told me that this was the thing to do and so I just followed orders. You know, where you have that integrity to stay present in a crazy situation. You're asking human beings to be kind of extraordinary in those circumstances, because the ordinary human being may go down a bad path. So the antidote in some ways seems to be to make yourself extraordinary, to be able to withstand that kind of situation. And that's where a great leader makes a huge difference, because so many people will be like flags in the wind. You know, if the wind is tilting one way, they will go with it. If the wind is tilting heavily the other way, they'll also go that route. And so that's what interests me, is because while a few humans will always choose a pretty messed up evil side, a bunch of humans can go either way. What is that shape the kind of human beings that will be able to be a great leader, or even just for themselves, even if they have nobody under them, just they will make choices that in an ideal scenario most human beings would want to make. What does separate the guy who, you know, is sitting there on the couch saying, oh, I would be that guy, and the guy who actually is that guy.
I think one of the difficulties with that is, Jocko, you and Jordan Peterson talked about this in your podcast together. You were talking about the book Ordinary Men and how you've got a group of guys there who are being ordered to do something that's grotesque, and it's not simply a matter of that's a real good situation. If let's say you are a person of strong moral character, of just all the things that you would want him to be, you've got two conflicting moral systems here, because you have a duty and obligation to your fellow soldiers who are going to have to go do this one way or another unless you revolt completely. And then you're betraying your country, and there's all these other things that are brought into it that that are moral things. These are it's moral to not want to abandon your friends and your colleagues to have to go do the hard work that has to be done so that you can go nurture your self-righteous sense of personal morality, or at least that's the type of thinking that might go through a person's head. Like, what right do I have to put my own personal idea of what's right ahead of my obligation as a soldier, ahead of what my country is telling me to do, ahead of just being in there with all of my friends and fellow soldiers and leaving it to them? Like, that's a moral thing. That is something that you want people to feel, right? And I wonder sometimes how much of these situations are filled with people who, maybe 90% of them, the vast majority that aren't those few evil ones, they're all kind of looking at each other like, maybe inside they don't necessarily think this is right, or they don't want to be doing this, but they don't want to abandon their friends, and their friends are looking at them thinking the same thing, and you just have this vicious cycle, that ends in one of these things.
Yeah, and part of the problem there is the human willingness to rationalize and make justifications for oneself. It's like, well, in that, because, when you look at the principles that people hold, like what they believe their philosophy of life is and the way they behave, even in much more ordinary circumstances. I mean, you made the example of the cheating husband, right? How many people seriously believe that monogamy is the right thing and you don't cheat on your spouse? There will be lots and lots and lots of people who say, yeah, of course I believe in it. How many people actually live up to it? And it's like, come on, man, nobody's shooting at you. It's a much more mellow situation, and people in many cases can't live up to their ideals in very ordinary circumstances, let alone when you start pressing the buttons and when the circumstances are no longer ordinary, but it becomes real panic time and stress and all of that goes up. So to me, it's like you need to have almost a maniacal determination to have this code of conduct that you will hold up no matter what happens. Like, I use it as, it's a joke, but it's not a joke. Like, I use it for daily life as, like, to me, I have very few moral rules that are absolutes, but the ones that are, there are no exceptions. So for me, like, if you give your word to somebody, there are no exceptions. It's like, don't give your word unless you are 110% sure you're going to keep it. Don't. I don't mind. We can have a regular conversation and you don't give your word. But if you do give your word, to me, there is no, oh, sorry, I didn't think in that situation or there was that exception. To me, the only way you apologize is a samurai style. You stick a knife in your belly and you slice back and forth. That's how you say sorry. There is no exception to that.
It's almost as if that those rules serve as pole stars when you're in a situation that's as chaotic as something like combat, where you have to have a few rules that, maybe they're arbitrary, but you'll die for them. Yep. Because when you're in the midst of a situation that is completely outside the realm of your normal experience, they give you reference points. They structure the situation a little bit for you, so you're not just lost in chaos. There's some structure to it, and then you can evaluate the rest of the environment relative to those hard and fast rules that you've got. Because in the situation, when you're in My Lai, and you're one of the people who's kind of on the fence, but now people are shooting, that is not the time to have this argument with yourself.
No, that's not when you're going to figure it out, for sure.
Well, this might sound really obvious, and it is. It's a very simple, obvious answer to this really, really hard question of, how do you prevent this thing from happening, or who's the kind of person that will stand up? And the answer is actually quite simple. It's training and education. It's training and education. And if people understand that these kind of things can happen and they get put in these pressure situations and they get trained and they get debriefed on mistakes that they made and they saw that they got emotional and you train them correctly, well, then you've got someone who gets into a me lie situation and says to themselves, wait a second, we're not getting shot at right now. Cease fire. And that was the most incredible thing about that story is that's all it took was one leader to say, hey, stop killing people. And they literally stopped that moment. So training people and putting them in these situations and educating them so that they understand, so that they have pattern recognition, training them so that they can learn how to detach, training them so that they can control their emotions, training them that they can see when horrible things are unfolding before them, and then how that they can put a stop to them. That is what is important. And as you mentioned, Darryl, as the Vietnam War drove on, the training got less and less, and the officers were getting sent over quicker and quicker, and you're getting on-the-job training, and the person that you're getting on-the-job training from is a person that's only been doing it for 2.5 months longer than you. And that's how these things occur. So you have to invest in people that are going to be in these situations. And it's the same thing. Again, I tell this to businesses all the time. Have you done, on a construction site, have you done a drill if you have a mass casualty? Do you know where you're going to call in casualty evacuation? Do you know what the air flight or life flight number is? Does anyone have the life flight number here? Because if someone gets hurt, you need to make that call. And do you know what station you're going to call? What helicopter you're going to call? Do you know where they're going to land? Why would you not run those things? And if those things unfold and you're not prepared for them, you're going to fall apart. And it's the same thing with these ethical and moral situations where if you don't understand what they are and you don't understand what can go wrong, you're gonna have a bad day.
Mm-hmm. And I thought it was brilliant what you brought up a little bit ago when you said there are steps along the way that long before the crisis manifests itself, there's that ability to recognize the tiny little steps that are leading there. Now, when you look at that tiny thing, it looks tiny. It doesn't look like a big deal. That's no crisis. That's not a problem. But it's that first step that's taking you down that path. And it's a lot easier to stop it early than when crisis is on. And so in that sense, that does become a training. That does become a thing of like, how do you recognize the steps? How do you work on it? And, you were saying things like even something as basic, like, hey, breathe 1 second. Take 1 second to breathe before you react. Then think how you want to react. It's the same thing that applies to everything. It applies to conversation when people you care about maybe are getting you angry. Do you really want to respond right away, or maybe take 3 seconds to take a breath, then decide how you want to respond, And I think to me, it's weird, as silly as that is, because, clearly war and parenting are very far universes in so many ways. But to me, has been one of the, depending on your kids, I guess.
I got 4 kids.
But, right.
Get some.
But I guess to me has been one of the most unforgiving mirrors that I ever had put in front of me, was seeing how I react under extreme stress, when you haven't slept for 2 days, when somebody's throwing a fit that's completely unjustified, and suddenly it's like, yeah, you have all the good reasons to be mad, but really this is how you respond? This is how you react to a 4-year-old kid who's just being a 4-year-old kid, and you get all emotional and you start yelling, and suddenly 10 seconds into me blowing up, I see myself from the outside and I'm like, I'm everything that I despise in this moment. That man right there that's responding that way has all the reasons, I can see why. Doesn't matter. You still don't do it, And rather than just being like, okay, let's whip myself, I'm a horrible human being, I discovered that, is like, okay, what can I do not to get here next time?
You got real world training. Right? Because now you recognize the situation and now you don't let it happen anymore.
Exactly.
I was talking to you guys earlier. I hit it my first deployment to Iraq. We went and hit a target. And it sounds almost like, like what you'd imagine in a movie. We'd get handed a map. And on the map, it'd be a city block in Baghdad, and there'd be a red X on one of the buildings. And that's all I needed. Oh, you want me to go hit that red X? Cool. We'll go hit that red X. And one night we went and hit the building with the red X on it. And when we hit the target, it was, like the most normal family you could ever imagine. And as we started talking to them, and we had our interpreter get in there and figure out, hey, do you know who this person is? They're like, yeah, he lives 2 doors down. Oh, okay. And so then I went back and eventually said to myself a question that if I had more experience, I would have asked this question for me. I said, hey, I got a question. Who put that red X on that building and why?
Right.
And as I pulled the string on it, it was one of those things where they had gotten some intel, which, I won't talk about where it came from, but it was intel that, put it in that general vicinity, and they picked the center of the general vicinity. There's the center of the general vicinity. There we'll put the X, and no follow-up. And so I always taught that as something, hey guys, make sure you know who's giving you this intelligence. And that's the case that happened to My Lai, where the person on no one at the platoon level said, hey, hold on a second. Who's confirming that this is 100% VC in this village? 100. You're telling me this is 100% VC in this village? That's what we're saying right now? Who's saying that? I want to talk to that person. And that's another thing I talk about all the time is as a leader, you don't want to be surrounded by yes men. Mm-hmm. You don't want to be surrounded by yes men. And, we're talking about the horrors of Vietnam War, and I'm reading another book right now, and there's a platoon commander, and his guys are they're rotating between 3 locations. And 2 of the locations are not too bad. The other location is a nightmare. It's Vietnam War stereotypical. It's booby traps, snipers, and indirect fire. They never see the enemy. They just never see the enemy. And all they do is they go out there on patrol, they get blown up, they get shot, they get mortared, and they never see the enemy. And their guys are getting wounded or killed. And as you think about that, I would pray that if I was the company commander or the battalion commander, that platoon commander would come to me and say, hey, Jocko, this is stupid. Let me tell you how many people we've lost. Let me tell you how many other the platoons have lost. And let me tell you what we've gotten out of it. We've gotten nothing out of it. And we need to stop this, or we need to find a better way to do it. If you want to send us in there, let us set up a strong point. Let us set up a bunkered position. We'll stay and we'll observe. But us just walking around in there waiting to get blown up makes no sense whatsoever. Please, let's do something else. And as a leader, you have to have the open mind to say, okay, I thank you. I appreciate that feedback. What are your suggestions? You've been in the area of operations. How do you recommend we do it? And whenever I hear these stories of guys that get put in really terrible situations in the military, it sickens my heart, because what you need is a culture inside any organization, the military, yes, but any organization, of people to raise their hands and say, hey, wait a second, this is stupid. Hey, wait a second. Do I not see an American flag on that Indian reservation with a white peace flag underneath it? And wait, hold on, stop. Why? Wait, stop. And that takes moral courage. It takes training. Mm-hmm. And it takes a culture inside an organization to stop people and question what they're doing.
And it takes that certain level of detachment that you were talking about.
It absolutely takes detachment.
It's like you were saying about like dealing with a 4-year-old or something. Like when you're in the middle of it, it seems normal. It seems like the way to behave. And it's only when you step back and say, one of the things about human beings, our great strength, I suppose, is that we're supremely adaptable creatures. I was talking to a psychologist one time who used to work for the State Department, and he worked in Africa for a while. And he was telling me some of the stuff that he would encounter, whole villages where every woman had been raped 10 times over the years, where kids in this village had watched their parents killed, just horrifying stuff. And my question to him at the time, because he was a psychologist, was, how are these people not just completely blown out with PTSD and everything else? Like, how are they functional at all, given what we know about PTSD and how it does function under circumstances that are far less severe than that? And that's what he said. He said, you'd be surprised. Humans are very, very adaptable, and to them, this is their environment. And that can work the other way, too, though. That can work in the direction of in the new Ken Burns Vietnam documentary, which is just, I don't know if you've watched it yet.
I haven't watched the whole thing yet, but I watched I think the first 2 episodes.
Okay, so one of the ones you're coming up on, The name of it is This Is What We Do. And it starts out talking about this new recruit, and he shows up to this place, and like the first thing he sees when he gets to the base that he's at, it's not a massacre or anything like that, but it's just sort of a Vietnamese prisoner or a captive being led along by a corporal or something, and he's just being rough with him and kind of pushing him along and doing stuff that clearly is outside of regulations. And this new guy shows up and he's like, hey, like you're supposed to be doing that or whatever it is. And the first thing he hears when he gets over there is, kid, this is Vietnam. This is what we do. And he said that the whole rest of the time that he was there, when he saw something he didn't like, when he was doing things that he wasn't sure about, he just repeated in his head, this is Vietnam, this is what we do, this is what we do. And after a while, he didn't have to repeat it anymore. After a while, that was his environment. And, it reminds me, I used to have these recurring dreams. I probably shouldn't share this on the air, but I used to have these recurring dreams. I still have them every once in a while. The details and the setting differ, but it'll be something like the dream starts and I'm in like a helicopter, say, and I'm flying around like a city like LA or wherever, and I'm just shooting people like Grand Theft Auto. It's just like a video game. Da-da-da-da-da-da. And I'm going through and I'm doing all this. Sometimes there's people down there I know, my friends and stuff, and it's just it seems just like I'm in a video game. And then the way the dream goes is at a certain point, after a few minutes of this, all of a sudden it hits me what I'm doing. And I look around and it's almost as if I wake up in the dream and I'm like, oh my God, like I'm killing all these people. What am I doing? But at the time, it was completely normal. It seemed exactly like this is just what I should be doing or anything like that. And that's something I think that is, well, it's why you told people stop looking down the barrel of your gun. You got to step back and be able to get that distance so you can change your frame.
And again, with the proper training and the proper education, you will know as a leader that behavior will escalate. That behavior will escalate. And if you allow it to happen, it will continue to get worse. And so it starts off, and I've read all kinds of books about Vietnam, especially about Vietnam, where it starts off. It starts off with, hey, the villagers we kind of know them, everything's cool, give them lollipops. But then, one of our guys dies, and then, well, we're not giving them lollipops. As a matter of fact, we're kicking the kids away. And it only escalates to there, and it escalates to murder, and it escalates, I should say this, it can escalate. It doesn't automatically escalate because all it takes is someone to step in and say, hey, no, that's across the line. Like, you know what? You want to slap a guy? I get it. But that's the line. Anything, one thing that we used to say, and I used to tell my guys, once the cuffs are on somebody, so once we get somebody zip tied, it's over. Like, you do what you got to do to get a guy under control. Once they're zip tied, it's done. And now they're getting taken care of. And you treat them firm but fair. That's it. And so those lines, you have to draw them, and you have to hold the line as a leader because things start to escalate. It's the thing that you were asking me about earlier about the Chechen War and the Russians against the Chechens, and they didn't hold the line with the little things. And when you lose that discipline, even on the smaller things, well, eventually, then you don't have the discipline on the bigger things. Can you go overboard with that? Yes, you can. I can hold the discipline so hard on the little things that no one listens to me on the big things. That's why leadership is hard, because there's a dichotomy there that you have to balance. You can't be freaked out because, you didn't blouse your boots when you were supposed to. But at the same time, if I start to let too many things slide, well, it will escalate.
And it seems like maybe with things like that, a lot of people who are civilians, they laugh when they see in movies or TV shows or something about how soldiers in combat are still expected to groom themselves. They're still expected to take care of themselves and comport themselves in a military way. And what I tell them a lot of the times is, and maybe you can confirm this because I don't really know what I'm talking about, but is that my feeling on why that stuff is so important is that you can't have you can't have Iraq and the sectarian war and all the stuff, the storm that's going on around them. You can't have that become the environment to which they're adapting. The environment to which they need to be well adapted is the U.S. military. That's their environment. That's what they're focused on, following these rules and behaving in this way. And then when that's their environment, they can go into these places and do their jobs. If they get in there and they start reacting to what's going on around them, because I mean, you can tell a guy.
He's talking about going native, right?
Yeah.
You can't go native.
You know, once
that's apocalypse now, right?
You can tell a guy once the cuffs are on, but you know, if I was talking to a family yesterday and this is the guy that just cut their heads off, well, I mean, you know, you can't put yourself in a situation, because it does make sense to beat the shit out of that guy. It does make sense to put a bullet in his head when the cuffs are on, like even from a moral standpoint in certain ways. Like, you can justify that, you know? And so that's why you can't be reacting to whatever it is that's going on. And it sounds like that's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, and there's actually an interesting dichotomy there as well, because you need to follow the rules, right? Because if the three of us decided, hey, we're going to go on this village raid and we're all going to use our morals as our guide. Well, we have three different scenarios. Mm-hmm. You just admitted that you'd be executing somebody that was already handcuffed. Who knows what you'd be doing?
Don't want to know.
You know, I don't even want to know, right? So we're all over the map, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe you're saying you're not even don't even want to handcuff anyone because you think that's too offensive, and I'm somewhere in the middle. Whatever the case may be, we're all over the map. So I would always tell the guys, look, you need to do what is legal. What's legal? But then the paradox of that is sometimes what you can get away with legally still isn't the right thing to do. And that's why there's a dichotomy between those two, between do I follow the rules exactly? Or, I mean, you know, look at Milai, look at Sand Creek. My boss told me to shoot this guy. Mm-hmm. Told me to shoot this 3-year-old baby. My boss told me to do that. Mm-hmm. Should I be following orders? Is there a threat that I don't know about? You know, these days, I've heard a lot of stories now. The guys that took down Mosul, right? The enemy was sending surrendering children to come and surrender to coalition forces, and they would be strapped with IED vests, suicide vests, and over and over and over again, it was our U.S. military, you know, especially our explosive ordnance disposal folks, and that were going and disarming these bombs on these kids. But yeah, how do you feel after you see 2 or 3 of those little kids get killed, plus 2 or 3 EOD guys get killed, and now you're going to fight those guys and they want to surrender? That's a very challenging thing. Mm. And if you don't maintain discipline, it's a slippery slope.
And it's funny because we're saying two things at the same time, which sound contradictory, and yet that's life. That on one hand, you need to have these super strict rules that you're not going to bend under any circumstances. And on the other hand, the thing that you rightly point out to is the fact that real leadership is also the ability to think on your feet, and no two situations are alike. So the rule-following approach, while it may save you from some of the worst abuses, is not always necessarily the right thing. And there is also the time when we always follow the rules, except when we don't, because that's the one time when it's correct. And that ability to make the right call at the right time, that's what makes an extraordinary human being.
When we're just sort of in debates or popping off at the mouth today, we sort of take for granted that the whole I was just following orders question was settled at Nuremberg. It was not settled at all. That's an incredibly complicated question for just the reason you were describing. You know, somebody who worked at a Nazi death camp, you know, they didn't make 10,000 independent decisions to kill somebody. They made one decision that their own personal moral compass was going to get outsourced to the state, and that they were going to do their duty and follow their orders. They made that decision once, and now once you've made that decision and you've outsourced your moral compass, which again, under most circumstances, that might be the thing that keeps you from doing the wrong thing. That might be the thing that keeps me from executing that, you know, Al-Qaeda guy. But when the institutions themselves start to get warped, or if you're in, even if the institution is an individual unit or something, you know, it's I can't remember where I heard it, but there's some zoologist or somebody who pointed out to him that like he had asked why zebras have black and white stripes when the grass is gold colored and yellow, and they don't blend into that at all. Clearly tigers can see that. And he pointed out to him that camouflage isn't to blend into the environment. That camouflage is to blend in with each other. They blend with the herd. And so the tigers have a difficult time tracking down, like, and focusing on an individual. And they figured that out because they wanted to try to, put ear clips on them or something to track these things around. But they noticed every time they put something identifiable on one of them, the tigers would kill it. And it was because now they had something to focus on. And so, and that's, I'm not making a literal evolutionary comparison here, but there's an interesting, like, just sort of analogy, which is this instinct to blend in with the herd. There's safety there. There's a sense of security there. And there's virtue in forfeiting a certain amount of your personal judgment to the group to which you have obligations. That's a good thing under most circumstances, and at least in a lot of circumstances. That's what duty is. That's what, just fulfilling your obligations to your people or your unit or something. Like, who are you, especially if you're an 18-year-old kid who just got out of high school and you're over there, and you're in a situation where you've got, like in My Lai, you've got officers, you've got not just your immediate officer, but it seems to be being reinforced by your captain above, your company commander. At the time in My Lai, there was a major general in a helicopter observing, buzzing around that place. And so, you're in a situation where you say to yourself, like, who am I to say that what's going on here is wrong? It seems wrong to me because of what I learned from my mama or whatever. But what does that mean? Like, I've got a captain, I've got a lieutenant, I've got my sergeants, I've got this major general in the air, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this, I just got here 4 months ago. This is Charlie Company's first major combat operation. They really hadn't made direct combat with the enemy, and it's the first time any of them have seen combat for the most part. And I think it's there's certainly a certain amount of weakness that's involved, like you were talking about. But I also think there's a certain amount of moral confusion that happens. Of course. And that's there can't be that kind of confusion. Like, that is where leadership has got to take over.
Well, I can add another layer of complexity to this. Okay, so first of all, I do think that Napoleon said, if you execute an order that you know is wrong, and when he was talking about it, he's not talking about something immoral. He's talking about, if I do something where a bunch of my men get killed because the general said to do it, and I do it, I'm culpable. So that's pretty clear, that if your boss tells you to do something that you know is going to, in Napoleon's case, it was get a bunch of your guys killed, then you say no. And if you do it, you're culpable for what happens. You could say the same thing if I get told to do something that's morally or ethically wrong and I do it, well, guess what? Then I'm responsible for that. What becomes a little bit complicated to me, or adds another layer of complexity, is this. If I'm going to Sand Creek and I'm with Shivington and he says, "Hey, we're going to go there and we're going to execute this, and we're going to kill these guys. We're going to conduct a raid," and I don't believe in it. Okay, so I say, you know what? I don't believe in it. I don't think it's the right thing to do. I think that we've made enough peace with them. We've caused enough problems. That's their land. I'm not going. Okay, so now you don't go because you didn't believe in the mission. Well, now who's out there conducting the mission? Everyone that's going out there to conduct the mission is people that are compliant with what he's saying. So you would be morally a better person if you said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do this, because if I don't, I know it's going to be someone that's totally compliant with Shivington. And I'd rather be there to at least spare some of the people, which we know people did. And so there's a little complexity. I talk about this in the business world too. People say, my boss told me to do this, and I think it's a bad idea and I don't think we should do it. Okay, so are you going to get put off the project? Are you going to get pulled to a different department where you no longer can take care? Because this is too hard on my people. I refuse to do this. Okay, that's fine. You refuse to do this. I'll put someone in there that won't refuse, and you no longer can protect your people, and your people are in a worse situation. So the whole
organization is degraded.
The whole organization. So you raise your hand, you make your protest, but sometimes you've got to say, okay, I've made my protest, and I understand that you're still wanting me to do this, and even though I think it's the wrong thing to do, I'm going to proceed down the path, because I'd rather me be able to mitigate as much of this problem as I can than have somebody that's just going to do this to the fullest extent that you would want them to do. So there's another additional complexity there that it gets involved.
Absolutely, because sometimes, as you said, just denying, you're just making yourself feel better, but the reality is that plan is going to go ahead. you are the only thing that stands in the way of that plan going to the 100th percentile. You can bring it down to 50, It's still going to feel ugly. You're still going to feel part of something you don't want to be part of. But the only thing you do by refusing is patting yourself on the back and say, am I not a moral guy? It's like, yeah, but no, because, it's like the thing is you can use that power in that situation for something that is better than if you just look at yourself in the mirror, saying how great you are by not doing it. And in fact, that's what was pretty incredible about the Sun Creek story.
Yep.
Silas Soul, he's told right before, if you don't want, stay home. Nobody's forcing you. Just stay home. Don't be part of it. And Saul and Kramer and some of those guys said, no, we want to be there. We want to be there to observe, to be able to make the choice on the spot. And it makes a huge difference right there.
My feeling on it, just sort of looking at it all from the outside, is that, and especially in a counterinsurgency war, that without strict military discipline and strong leadership, that abject savagery is gravity will take you there. That's where things will head on their own unless you are supremely focused on discipline and leadership and education and those kind of things. That you don't really have to ask the question, how can this kind of thing happen? The real question is, how does this not happen all the time, right? How is it that American soldiers in Iraq and you go into Iraq and they're seeing maybe husbands and fathers that they spoke to the previous day that they know are innocent and not part of the fighting, and they see his wife beheaded and him with a power drill hole in the side of his head. How are American soldiers not going and executing reprisal attacks against these people all the time? How is it not just completely getting out of hand? And like that, to me, is by far the more interesting question. I don't have to ask myself, how is it that somebody went and shot up the house of the person who did something like that? That's an easy question to answer, and the much more interesting one is how it doesn't happen all the time. And it seems like it has to be institutional. It can't come down to like institutional culture, right? Relating it to their sense of personal identity and social identity with the group, that this is not who we are. That if I do this, it's not going to win me any kudos from my teammates or anything like that. They're going to look at that as a betrayal because I'm bringing dishonor upon us because this is not what we're about. And they have to be able to look at it that way. And if they don't know that, by doing something like that, they're going to, they want to blend in with the group. They want to be accepted by the group. They want to be looked at as somebody that can be relied on. And that has to mean following the rules and doing the right thing.
Yeah, well, Daniele, you pointed this out earlier. You said, well, this seems like it's just the communications aspect is so important, and that's 100% right. So as we all know, the strategy in the Vietnam War for America was to kill more of them than they did of us, and drop more bombs on them, and eventually they'll just break, just a war of attrition. And so the strategy was rack up as many high kill count as you possibly can. So that's the messaging. Mm-hmm. That's the messaging. So when that's the messaging, that's the messaging.
Yeah.
In Iraq, they were very clear about, hey, we're not an occupying force. We're here to liberate these people. We're here to secure the populace and make sure that they can have a free country. That's the messaging. So does that messaging always make it down to the front lines? No. That's why we do have incidents where horrible things happen. Absolutely. But it is about the messaging, and it is about everyone understanding why they're doing, what their mission is, what is right and what is wrong, and you can be educated on that legally. Hey, you're not allowed to do this. You can do that, but you can't do this. And then the other point that you made, which is, well, you said you got to be able to manage people in a time of crisis as a leader, but more important, and you actually asked a really complicated question and then answered it yourself, and you did that like 3 times in that one sphere of conversation that you had with yourself.
It's this caffeine.
Yeah. Is you said, you got to be able to manage people in these pressure situations. And then you added that, but what you really need is culture. And you're right, because you're not going to be there. The leader is not. I wasn't with all my elements on the battlefield all the time. They were out there all the time without me. All the time without me. They were the ones that had to understand what they could and what they couldn't do. They were the ones that had to make those hard decisions. They weren't calling. My snipers didn't call back to me and say, "Hey, Jocko, I see this with this guy." They didn't even ask their platoon commanders that. They didn't ask anyone. They knew what the rules of engagement were. They knew what our strategy was. They understood. And one of the things that I told them, speaking of rules of engagement, so our rules of engagement was, several page legalese document written by some lawyers in Washington, D.C. or wherever. And, I've got kids in my platoon that are 20, 21, 22 years old, high school graduate, and they came in the SEAL teams like I did, by the way. And so they're looking at a legal document like that. Doesn't mean anything to them.
Sure.
My rules of engagement for them was very simple. Make sure the people you're killing are bad. You make sure the people you're killing are bad. And why? And then I explained to them why that was important. And the reason why that was important was because the day that some civilians brought a headless body that had taken a 300 Win Mag round to the head and their head was gone, and they said, "This was our imam, or this was our school teacher, or this was our neighborhood doctor, and one of your snipers killed them," and they would figure out it was us. First of all, our operations would get shut down. So selfishly, we don't want to get our operations shut down. But more important than the selfish reason, if that happened, we would leave all the soldiers and Marines that we were working with on a daily basis, that we were providing Overwatch for, we'd leave them without the support that we had committed to give them, because we weren't allowed to operate anymore, because we weren't being discriminatory enough with our fire. So the culture is so important. People understanding why they're doing what they're doing is so important. And if you don't get that messaging, and to your point, Daniele, if you don't get the communication correct, then you're going to end up in a world of hurt.
And the point you just made, the make sure the people you kill are bad, is such a... Think about it. There are so few words, right? You say it in like very, very few words. And yet it's so central, because you look at not only Sand Creek or My Lai, but look at even like half of the... when the Nazis invade the Soviet Union, and then when the Red Army does the counter and they start invading Germany, both armies do horrible things to one another civilian. And the idea is, well, the Nazis did it to our people, so we did it to theirs. Well, that mom that you are shooting in the head, she had nothing to do with what happened to your people. She's not the Nazi soldier who did it. She's not the bad one just because she's from the same nation. Are you kidding me? That doesn't make her the bad person. And I think that's part of the problem with group identity. That so often, that's why stereotypes are dangerous, because you start grouping individuals into this mental category you may have of like, those guys are bad. That individual only shares some physical characteristic with the other one. They share, maybe they are even related, but they are not the same person. They haven't made the same choices. They haven't committed the same action. So the fact that you treat all the Cheyenne the same, or you decide you treat all the Vietnamese the same, or all the Germans the same, or all the Russians, that's where everything goes wrong, because you're not making sure that the person you're hurting is the bad one, is not the one. There's no revenge there. They are not the same people. And yet it happens over and over again, where people fall into this idea of group mentalities. Well, I couldn't catch that guy, but he's one of their group. It's like, no, man, there are individuals that are involved. There's no collective guilt of... It's kind of the same reason why, for example, terrorism strikes us as so awful in every possible way, because you're not going against the guy that you have a grievance against. You're going against the guy from the same nation. It's like, that has nothing to do with one another,
I feel like sometimes group identity, it's one of those double-edged swords, right? Because on one hand, there's the side of it that we mentioned earlier. Maybe your loyalty to your group and not wanting to bring dishonor upon them, if that's the culture, is what keeps you from putting a bullet in the head of the guy you just cuffed, right? Sure. You might be able to appeal to... you can say to people, hey, we're Americans, and this is not how we behave. And you're appealing to their group identity there, and that
No, but I get
it's a double-edged sword.
But that is
difficult.
a case in which you're using group identities for as the good guys. And granted, yeah, it may not be that every single one from that country really fit that idea, but you're putting a nice ideal and you're encouraging people to live up to it. That's already different from, while it's similar in dynamics, to damned bad guys and plugging everyone into that group where do you know that person really fit that stereotype that you have of that group?
How did you make clear to your men when you said, make sure the people you're killing are bad, that they understood what was meant by that?
It is, well, first of all, there are specifics in the rules of engagement, and one of them is clear hostile intent. Hostile act or hostile intent, which means this person has to be doing something actively that's going to cause a negative impact. Now, you can tell which people are bad. You can tell when they're starting to do something that's a hostile act or hostile intent. You can tell. And these guys, my guys they knew they would err on the side of like, I'm going to make sure that this person is doing something bad. But, we had some decent arguments about the rules of engagement. I had some decent arguments about the rules of engagement up the chain of command because the rules of engagement were applying to all of Iraq. And Ramadi was not like the rest of Iraq at this time in 2006. And, if you've got someone that is, for instance, observing a location with binoculars, right? If you're in Baghdad and you're looking at a location with binoculars, you're gathering intelligence, which could be considered, which is not considered a hostile act. It's the intelligence gathering. You might suspect the person being bad, but there's no way to prove that. Mm-hmm. In Ramadi, if you saw somebody that was looking with binoculars at friendly forces, they weren't gathering intelligence. They were absolutely coordinating an attack. And that is a big difference because that is a hostile act and it's damn sure hostile intent. And so, those are the kind of things that I would discuss up the chain of command, and we would provide them the resources. I talk a lot about playing the game, right? Like if my boss tells me to do something, I'm going to play the game. I'm going to try and do it. And occasionally I'll get the question of like, well, what if you get told to do something that you really don't want to do? What if you got told to do something that you were opposed to, right? What if you got the order to go to the My Lai massacre and you got the order? Well, yeah, I'd say no. And first of all, that doesn't happen. The closest example I have to that happening was for me in Ramadi. We had been told that we had to take a certain number of Iraqi soldiers with us on every operation we conducted because we were trying to turn the war over to them. And so they needed to get out there and do operations. And they were telling us, they were putting this rule all over every American unit in Iraq. You needed to have an Iraqi face on every operation. So what did the Americans do? What did the American units do? What they did was they say, okay, yeah, we're going to take our platoon of 40 guys and we're going to take 2 Iraqis with us and there's your Iraqi face. Well, that doesn't move the war forward. They were obeying the rules.
Sure.
So the senior leadership figured this out and said, no, you guys are playing games. Here's the new rule. For every, and I forget what the number was, they made a ratio. For every 7 Americans that you have, or for every 1 American you have to have 7 Iraqis, or there was some number, some ratio. And in Ramadi, some of the units of Iraqis that we were working with only had 18 guys or 17 guys. And so that would have meant me sending my guys in the field with 2 or 3 SEALs only. Which if you're going to go into a bad area and who are you going to send? Because you want to have a radioman, you want to have a medic, you want to have a guy that can call for fires, you want to have a leader, and you want to have a couple heavy weapons guys. That's 6 or 7 guys right there minimum.
Right.
And so when the chain of command told me, hey, you got to do this ratio, I looked at the ratio and I said, hey guys, in Ramadi, that's not a good idea, and here's why. I'm not going to send my guys in the field without a corpsman or without a radioman or without a JTAC or without a machine gunner. I'm not going to do that. And you know what they said? They said, that makes sense, Jocko. You proceed. Like, if you articulate yourself correctly, then you can get your point across. Now, had they said to me, hey, listen, no, you're only allowed to do this, well, then I would have objected further up the chain of command. And I would not have put my guys at risk to do something that didn't make sense.
Yeah, of course.
Not going to do it. And again, that's what I always encourage military people, but not just military people, business people as well. If you're the CEO of a company and you've given some directive that you don't understand the full depth of the directive that you've given, and your front line, somebody in your front lines realizes that's going to have a hugely negative impact on your company, do you want them just to follow orders?
Right.
You absolutely don't want them to follow orders. You want them to raise their hand and say, hey, boss, this doesn't make sense.
And the thing you said about, you don't want to surround yourself with yes men, which makes perfect sense. Then again, it's one of the things where you really need to have work on yourself, because the reality is that most people have an ego. Most people don't like to be told, hey, boss, sorry, but that doesn't sound right. It's like, what do you mean? There's that reaction. It's like stung in their pride, which, of course, that's where all bad decision-making start going. But it's a very normal reaction, you know what I mean? It's like most people have, to one degree or another, an ego. And especially if, like, your guy maybe phrase it. Maybe they're right? They make a point where they are pointing to something in your plan that doesn't work. But they phrase it in a way that's kind of blunt. So A, you don't like being reproached. B, you don't like the tone. By that point, even though their content is perfectly correct, you're not hearing it. Yeah. Because it's like, you have a bad, I don't like you. First you're criticizing me, and then you're going about it with that tone. The guy is just saying things plainly how they are. Maybe he doesn't have a bad tone. He's just not cuddling you in, like, slowly, gently saying, hey, let's see it this way.
And you know what? A guy in that, because I get that kind of question all the time with all the companies we work with. Oh, I got this guy, and my boss has a big ego, and I can't correct him because he just gets offended. Well, first of all, when you, just like you said, if you've got a big ego and I tell you that your plan is wrong, I'm attacking a fortified position, and you're only going to bolster your position stronger.
Exactly.
And so don't attack that position. Instead, a simple technique that you can use is say, hey, boss, I'm really not sure why we're using this approach. Could you explain this to me? Because I want to make sure that I really understand what it is you want me to do. And it seems like if I do this right here, it's going to cause this reaction. And I know you don't want that to happen. So could you just give me a hand in fully understanding what your plan is? Yeah. And that way you're kind of massaging their ego a little bit, and it opens their mind. And that's all you have to do is open up their ears. That's the goal, is just to open their ears a little bit so that you can start to have a conversation with them, and so that they can, going back to the whole topic of today, so that they can see you as a human being with an idea or an opinion that actually matters, as opposed to seeing you as someone that's attacking their ego. And that ego thing, I mean, if you think about the wars that have been, we always talk about the wars that are caused by religion, but the wars that are caused by ego are also pretty severe. And a lot of these incidents that we talk about, these retaliatory incidences, well, who's going to be the first person to say, you attacked my tribe, and I'm going to let it slide? That's a tough person. That's a hard position to be in. Yep. You're seen as weak. Yep. You're seen as vulnerable. You're seen as someone that can be pushed around. So that's a very delicate game that you have to play, and that causes problems. And that ends up, it's a game that's so hard to play. In fact, that most people, or many people across the span of time, have said, no, I'm not going to say that. They drew blood. We're going to draw more blood.
Yep. And it goes to what you were saying a second ago too. Your people have to know that you're going to ask those questions of your leadership, and that you're doing that work, because they got to trust you. That way, when Jocko comes to them and says, hey guys, I know this is going to sound a little bit weird, but here's what we're doing, and here's who you're bringing with you, and this is what we're doing. They know that if you're telling them to do it, it's got to be done. That every discussion has been had, that every angle has been looked at, that you've run it up the chain of command and registered your objections if they're there. But they know that Jocko is not going to send us out to do something like this unless it simply has to be done.
And I get asked this question a lot. Well, what do I do if one of my subordinates has a question about the way I've planned something and I don't have a good answer? What do I do then? And I say, well, what you do then is you listen to them. Yep. You actually listen to what they're saying, because if I've told you to do something and you've then responded with some reason why we shouldn't do that thing, and I can't explain away your reason, then probably I'm wrong. Yep. And as a leader, this is another thing where our ego plays a role. As a leader, our ego says, well, if I admit that I'm wrong to the troops, they're going to think they're going to think I don't know what I'm doing. The opposite is actually true. If I was in charge of you two and I presented you with a plan and you guys came back and said, hey, that plan's not smart, and I said, shut up and do it the way I told you, you don't respect me more, you respect me less.
Absolutely.
And if I came to you two with a plan and said, hey guys, here's the way we're going to execute this, and you say, hey, that's not a good idea, we should do it a different way, and I say, okay, well, what do you recommend? And we come together with a collaborative plan. You don't think less of me as a leader. As a matter of fact, you think more of me as a leader. You think that I'm a humble guy that will listen and take input. And by the way, bonus is you all now have real, true ownership of the plan, and we all feel good about it. And when you guys go in the field, you execute it to the utmost of your ability because it's something that you own.
It's amazing how everything you're saying it's as if you took a list of all the traits of Lieutenant Calley at My Lai and literally just said, do the opposite of all these things. He was a guy who couldn't take criticism from his men.
100%.
Who asserted, who pulled rank anytime anything like that happened, who was a complete transparent yes man to his captain above him, who would just never ask any questions. I mean, just right down the line. And as a result, his men had no trust in him, so that when they got into a situation that was chaotic, they felt like they were standing out on the corner by themselves in a country they didn't understand with nobody looking out for them. I don't want to say this in a way that makes it sound like I'm trying to justify anything they did. Of course not. But you put men in a situation where they feel like they're in complete chaos and they happen to have automatic weapons in their hands. Well, if I find myself in a situation where I'm completely overwhelmed by chaos, that automatic weapon's probably going to start to look like the best tool I have for structuring my environment.
Yeah, there's and obviously this went way beyond that. Years ago, I forget how many years ago, there was a shooting in New York City. I think it was 38 rounds were fired at maybe a homeless person, an unarmed person. I forget the situation. But there's a lot of people that just couldn't believe that all these police officers shot at this unarmed individual. It's a freaking horrible situation. And again, I always will say this. Like, whenever I talk about bad police shootings, I've been on ride-alongs with cops. I've done hits with cops. It's a freaking hard job.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not a guy that, like, I've done that a couple times here and there, but go out on that beat every day and deal with those scumbags of the world every single day, and you're going to have, it's one of the hardest jobs in the world. That situation, people say, how the hell did that happen? Well, there's a lot of tension in a situation. The emotions are high. People are screaming. We're not trained well. Everyone is sitting there with their slack out of the trigger, and when that first bang happens, it's a chain reaction. That's one of the situations that, I would see with my guys that was beautiful in Ramadi, was they wouldn't do that. If one of the snipers took a pointed shot at someone, they would take the pointed shot, and the others would hold fire, check fire until the situation either evolved or de-escalated. But the Army was always quite impressed with the fact that we would take really surgical shots at bad guys, and there wouldn't be massive amounts of collateral damage. Again, sometimes it's unavoidable, but
maybe you can talk a little bit about that, because I think that's one thing that gets really lost on a lot of people today, and I think there's a lot of propaganda that helps it get lost. There's no question that there's been an evolution in our values and our relationship to these kind of things over the years. You go back to something like Sand Creek, 1864, there might not have been a whole lot of people shedding too many tears over what happened. You get up to My Lai, and there's some controversy, and there's some there's a cover-up, all those kind of things. But once it comes out and it's laid bare and the evidence is clear, things had changed from 1864, and that incident and a few other incidents that were going on that made it out, or a few pictures that came out, it turned people against the war. They decided that this is not worth putting our men in a situation where we're going to be doing things like this. This is not worth it. And you get up to today in the Iraq War, something like Abu Ghraib, which is an unacceptable situation, but we're talking about prisoner abuse that doesn't that wouldn't cause the people who were working that prison 5 years before that, the Iraqis who worked for Saddam, that wouldn't even they wouldn't even make it through their filter, right? So I mean, what was going on there with the American soldiers? It was not okay, but it wasn't walking into a village and massacring 500 people. It wasn't brutal torture in the same way that we would think of what was going on before we took control of that prison. And yet, our response to that and the military's response to it once it came out was pretty dramatic. I mean, it was quick. There was not as much of a delay. As soon as it comes out, there's a clear shift that's going on there. If even primarily from the standpoint of it's a breach in discipline. That's not how you behave.
Yeah, and one of the things that I talk about with my guys is because you got to frame this right. Because you mentioned earlier that if you had dealt with this person that had cut the heads off of the 3-year-old girl yesterday, and now you had him cuffed and you knew it was him, that guy deserves a bullet, right? Hey, I agree with you. That guy deserves a bullet. The problem is, well, number one, it's a breakdown in discipline. But to me, more important, and what I would tell my guys is, if we behave that way, we have a significant chance of strategically negatively impacting our war effort. So I get that you want to kill these bad guys, but more important than us killing these bad guys is us winning this war. And so if we run around doing dumb things, we're going to have a negative strategic impact. And that was actually always the biggest worry as a leader, is you don't want to have something happen where you drop a bomb on the wrong area, or and a bunch of civilians get killed, or you don't want to have that thing happen. That's a real, and the effort and lengths that American forces go to prevent civilian casualties is incredible.
I don't think most people have any idea.
No, they don't.
How it works.
And I think that's one of the cool things about creating a certain mythology that people want to live up to. The first time you say it, it may not be true. It may be a wishful thinking that you are those people and you're not quite there. But as people keep repeating it, and you run again and again with the fact that your behavior doesn't match your ideals, more and more people will keep working on trying to actually build that thing. They don't want to feel like hypocrites. They actually want to live up to that ideal. And that's one of the things where, while sometimes people get turned off by when you have this high-minded ideal and this very poor behavior, they're like, look at that hypocrisy. They say these things and they don't mean it. Well, sometimes when you say it long enough, people actually do want to live up to it, and they do change their behavior. Oh, yeah. So while the theory may not match the practice when you start, if you keep at it long enough, the practice may try to inch closer to matching that theory.
The ideals
and
matter
that's not
a
bad thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you can take it to a political context, right? When people can point back at the United States, say before the 1960s and before the Civil War, and point to the Constitution and Declaration of Independence and these high-minded ideas, and people love to be the cynical one that says, oh, yeah, but slavery, and
of course,
but this and but that, and yeah, totally true. But the conclusion to draw from that is not that the ideals don't matter or that they're just on paper. The fact that those ideals were there was what allowed the civil rights movement to eventually come into being. That's what gave us the room. In fact, you could even say that we're talking about the same thing. That gap between ideal and reality, one way to talk about that is hypocrisy. But at the same time, that gap, that opening, that's the opening where people realize that and say there is a gap between our professed ideals, and it makes room for that kind of positive change, right? I mean, you can go back. The Mongols were never, ever going to give up slavery because their moral system didn't have room for that.
Yeah.
And so you could go up to them and say, well, how dare you enslave these people? And they're not going to get defensive. They're going to look at you like you're crazy because there's no room for that. For that gap.
That idea doesn't even exist.
Yep. Right. And so the ideals matter. And when they're broken, again, I think that there's a motivation on the part of a lot of people who are more cynical than they should be, given the country that they're fortunate enough to live in. And this is something that you get from going overseas to a lot of places. It's something certainly that I got from spending so much time in Africa and the Middle East for work is, boy, you come back after the first trip over to those places and you realize you want to kiss the ground when you get off that airplane, and you want to go around and just hug everybody you see, because you are so fortunate to live in a place where things that we absolutely take for granted over here are miracles. And, I think one of the things I really didn't want to do when I was talking about My Lai in that episode, I stayed very focused on the incident itself, sort of, because you don't want to be making excuses for something like that. You don't want to make it seem like you're trying to gloss over an atrocity, but you don't want to give fuel to that idea that like this speaks to like a larger problem in our society, because I just don't believe that.
Well, that's why it's a dance, right?
Yeah.
If you start pushing the button too much in the direction of making apologies for, well, after all, we are good guys and there are a few exceptions, but look, we stand for freedom and democracy. It's like, yeah, maybe, but let's not be so quick about sweeping under the rug all the bad stuff. Let's look at it. The guys who instead push on the button of, hey, look at all the bad stuff, that means that all these ideals are crap and it's not real and it's all hypocrisy, is like, whoa, slow down a second. Yeah, you get a couple of points where you're right, but you're also missing the boat. It's like, it's almost like, and that happens in most discussion, like in most situations, you rarely have somebody who is 100% wrong, is that they take a partial truth and they take it too far. And they lose perspective of the other side of the equation.
Yeah, like people don't understand. Like American soldiers were killed and maimed in situations that absolutely could have been avoided if we disregarded our rules of engagement, and if we made conscious decisions to put ourselves at risk when we did not have to, because we were trying to be sensitive to the environment and to the people that were there. And I don't think enough people recognize the historical anomaly that is. I mean, that is just you can't, for thousands of years of human history, that is just completely unthinkable.
Sure.
You couldn't imagine something like that. And the extent to which we go, I mean, Jocko has talked about this before on his show, the extent to which we go to try to make sure that the people, the targets that we're dealing with are targets. I think if more civilians had an idea of that, people would feel a lot different about what we do over there. It doesn't mean that when something happens like Abu Ghraib, they're not going to react against that, but they're going to react against it from a place of, hey, we're a good country. That shit is not going to fly. All right, you're not going to represent us that way, and that's fine. That's a healthy way to respond to something like that. But, again, political situation or whatever else is going on, people have more of a knee-jerk reaction to those things that you're talking about.
And I think in that sense, it goes back to that Dan Carlin approach to things, right? That ability to look at things one way, and just when you're getting comfortable with the conclusions to say, yes, maybe that is the conclusion we take, but it's not that easy. There's also a 20% from the other side that's not really wrong, and you should include in that. And that keeps you thinking on your toes. You don't become dogmatic. You don't become thinking in purely black and white terms. You always have to have that nuanced approach, and that's the problem. That's the other paradox, is most people take nuance to mean weakness. Then you can't make up your mind. You are too wishy-washy. You are, it's not black, it's not white, it's somewhere in there. It's like, no, that's also a weakness, is the ability to look at things both ways and also make a decision. That's where, to me, it comes in as where it's valuable. And I think it's funny because so many of the things that Jocko brings up are so about really the kind of human being that you want to become, about self-perfection, really, because that's what it boils down to, which is then what makes you a great leader, because there's no great leader without somebody who has worked on themselves a lot. And, when you break down to the principles, nothing sounds like it's that hard, right? It's all like, okay, of course, yeah, that makes sense. Oh, that completely... And yet it's one of the things where, while the theory may not be that hard, the practice is unrelenting. You have to be at it every single day, or it's so easy to sleep. There's a great line in the Tao Te Ching that I was mentioning to Darryl when we were driving down. There's the line that says, my way is very easy to understand and very easy to practice, but nobody understands it and nobody practices it. And I love it because, in theory, yes, it's not that bad. It's fairly straightforward. And yet there are so many steps along the way where it's easy to go the wrong path.
Yeah.
That is like, the theory is easy. The practice is you need to put in the work, and there's no substitute.
Each of those steps matters so much, too, because what Jocko was talking about, escalation in those situations. The book about the war in Chechnya you talked about, I think the line, I hadn't read the book until I heard your podcast on it, and it's one of those things that when you hear it, it's so obvious, but if you were to just step back from the context a little bit, it kind of seems ridiculous, which is that the savagery started when people stopped shaving, when soldiers stopped shaving. And I think part of the reason for something like that is the escalation's like a ratchet. Once you stop shaving, well, now you're a unit that doesn't shave anymore. Okay, whatever. Well, what that means is if you're a unit that lacks discipline, well, now your lack of discipline is not going to manifest as not shaving. You already don't shave. That's normal. That's totally normal. So now your lack of discipline is going to get to the next thing. Now I'm not cleaning my weapons properly. And then pretty soon you're a unit that doesn't shave and doesn't clean your weapons properly, and that doesn't even seem like a lack of discipline anymore. That just seems like daily life. And now your lack of discipline or whatever it is going to go up to the next spot. And it can happen with, just brutality and savagery and things like that as well, where now this kind of thing is just normal. So if I'm angry, and it's totally normal for us to be able to smack these prisoners in the face, but now I'm really pissed. Well, I'm not going to smack them in the face. I smack them in the face anyway. So I'm going to show my anger now by stepping it up. And well, okay, if that slides and the leadership doesn't step in, well, now that's normal. Yep. And we don't just smack soldiers, we punch and kick soldiers. Once that's the baseline, it ratchets up to that point. Well, it's going to escalate from there because that's kind of where it goes. And that's why catching those things right at the beginning and letting people know that, all of these things matter. I mean, that's probably the life lesson of a lot of the stuff you even talk about is everything matters. It all matters.
Yeah. And it takes some time. Like I didn't realize this when I was a 20-year-old SEAL or a 25-year-old SEAL. I kind of started getting the indications. And that's why, again, I talk about training and leadership because that's what this stuff is. Putting somebody into a moral dilemma with no training is like putting someone onto the jiu-jitsu mat with no training. They're just going to get destroyed. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and they have no control over it. And, you got to think about these things. You got to think deeply about these things so that you have some sort of an anchor that's grounded that won't get ripped out at the first person that says, hey, shoot that 3-year-old baby. You need to be grounded and have thought about these things in a deeper way. And what you said about people swaying one way or the other, you're right. And people actually want to be led. Mm-hmm. And they want to be led even more so when there is a pressure situation going on, when there's something that you're not used to or that people aren't used to, some kind of stressor, some kind of stress or pressure. If you can step up and lead at that moment, people are looking for it. They're looking for a leader. And I remember you were talking about one of the guys in My Lai, the 6'3" guy, and he's a natural leader, right? Mm-hmm. He's a natural leader that people kind of followed. And what he started going sideways and started just getting completely savage and brutal, people just kind of, okay, he's a guy, okay, that guy's stepping up. And that's, and there was no one on the other end of the spectrum to say, hey, no, we're not doing that. Stop. And that's the biggest lesson from that situation, actually from both the situations. Yeah. And, people talk about how can the leader be responsible if they're not there? Yes, the leader's responsible, whether they're there, the way they train the people, the way they educated, the way they communicated, the culture that they set with those people, they're responsible. And certainly these leaders were absolutely responsible in these scenarios.
I guess before we wrap, one last thing I want to ask you is these days, you say you work a lot with businesses. You clearly are, you're working primarily on the concept of leadership and how to teach people better tools to handle it. How do you go about it? Is it primarily like a business-oriented approach now with major businesses that are?
Yeah, we'll go in and do an assessment and figure out where the friction points are, figure out where they're having problems, and then we solve the problems that they're having through leadership. And that's every single problem in every single organization is a leadership problem. All of them. Mm-hmm. Whether it's your P&L's upside down, whether it's your processes aren't working correctly, whether you got the wrong people in the wrong positions, it doesn't matter. The problems are going to get solved through leadership and leadership alone. And that's why that's why we're doing well, because if you've got a P&L that's upside down, you've got leaders that aren't paying attention to their expenditures and their income.
Right.
If you've got processes that aren't working, you've got leaders that are in charge of those processes that are allowing them to continue to exist without refinement. If you've got people that are in positions that shouldn't be in those positions, you've got leaders that are allowing them to be in those positions without either being coached and mentored and trained so that they can lead, or removed from those positions. And you can go right down the list with any problem that any organization is having. There's a leadership solution to that problem. And that's what we do.
It seems to me like it's definitely the thing I'm going to take away from the most and listening to you talk about this stuff. Is one of the things that struck me is I came in with a lot of questions in mind I wanted to talk to you about, like that I started out with, right? You got your guys, you're going into a horrible situation and there's these horrible things going on. How do you restrain your guys from going and retaliating in these terrible ways? And your response and the look on your face and everything to it, it actually like kind of threw me off a little bit. It wasn't what I was expecting, because your answer to that really was, dude, if I have gotten to the point where we're there in Iraq and there's a guy with handcuffs and I have to figure out how to restrain my guys from doing something, I failed a long time ago. Because you took it as almost like, well, you deal with it. That was taken care of. How do we stop them?
Yeah,
we stopped them in training. We stopped them in boot camp. We stopped them at Buds. We stopped them in all the way up to here.
And I don't want to make that. I don't want to make that. I don't want to make light of that, because that is a hard situation. And when you lose guys in a unit of 35 guys and you got guys that are wounded and killed, there is absolutely an absolute fire that you have to control, because we know who's doing it. We can find them. We can get out there and get after them. And so we do have to keep ourselves in check. We do. I mean, we had many conversations of, hey, remember why we're here. Remember who we represent. Remember that if we get out of line, we won't even be allowed to do what we do anymore. Oh, so don't take it the wrong way that in any unit, you lose people, you lose your friends, you lose your brothers. That is an emotional thing, and you're in an emotional situation already, and you have direct access to unleash your emotions if you are allowed to. And yeah, with the platoon commanders that work for me, those guys, Leif, who wrote the book with me, he absolutely had to sit his guys down and explain to them, hey, let's remember why we're here. Let's remember that we could go to jail if we do the wrong thing. And nothing that we do here is worth any of you going to jail for any amount of time. So I didn't mean to make light of how hard that is and how difficult that can be. And it's not just for me, not just for the SEALs, but the Marines, the soldiers that were there, who are dealing with, like I said, they're dealing with younger kids and less training. And those, when you come in the SEAL teams, you came in because you wanted to go to combat. Like every single SEAL wants to go to combat. They want to be there. I don't know if you've ever heard my retirement speech. It's on YouTube. But when, I made a list and said, hey, if you want to go over to the eastern part of Ramadi and live in a blown out bunker and get into firefights every day, put your name on this list. And I walked out of the room. I came back 20 minutes later, and every single guy in the task unit had their name on the list. So we're dealing with guys that every single guy, that's what they want to do. Now, do they get tired? Do they get combat stress? They absolutely do. Do they get scared? Yes, they do. It's hard. But we have a guy that at least start from the position of, I want to do this. This is my profession. The Army, you definitely end up with guys that are coming in the Army because they wanted to pay for college, or they wanted to get a job, or they wanted to get out of whatever hometown they're in, and that's how they ended up in the Army. Again, there's also a great number of soldiers that are just as eager for combat, and certainly a great number of Marines that are the same attitude. So each one of those people, you have your own challenges, and it is hard, and you do have to. And what goes back to what this whole thing has been about, as the leader, You can't be the one that's getting wrapped up in those emotions. You can't be the one when I'll tell you what, your heart's going to be fucking broken when you lose guys. It's going to be broken, and you're going to want nothing more than to go out and rubble cities and salt the earth so everyone is dead and no one will ever live there again. But if you let that get a hold of you as the leader, your team and your men are going to be in hell. That's where they're going to end up. And so that's why the education, the training, the understanding. I mean, so many people contacted me after I did the Me Lie podcast that thank you. They play that Me Lie podcast for leadership training inside multiple military organizations. It's awesome. I'm so happy that they do that, because when I came out with that podcast, I had tons of people that said I didn't know about that. People that were in leadership positions didn't know what the My Lai massacre was, and it's one of the darkest stains on our history. But you have to talk about it. And you talked earlier about, hey, I didn't really want to go into too much of what led up to it because I didn't want to make excuses. Man, I went into detail of why it happened because I want everyone to understand all those little things. How when you cut those corners, how when you play the telephone game with your intelligence and you let people say things that you don't put them in check, and you let them use words that aren't correct, and you have people that don't have a culture to ask why we're doing this, and you set those situations up and you let bad leaders into in positions that they shouldn't be in. Cali failing out of OCS multiple times. Like, that's it. That's it. You let those things happen, and you're going to end up in hell. And as a leader, that's your job to stop it.
Yeah. It's a good place to wrap it up, man. My Lai didn't necessarily happen on March 16, 1968. It happened when Cali failed OCS. It happened when the intelligence failed to get passed down properly. It failed every time somebody was allowed to smack around a Vietnamese and they didn't get called on it. That's when it happened. You know, the actual acute incident was just the result of a long process. So
awesome.
It's great, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on. Thanks for you guys for what you do. And you guys put out kick-ass podcasts, and I appreciate listening to them. And maybe we'll get to do this again sometime.
Thank you as well. I mean, I can tell you from my own personal experience listening to your podcast, as well as a lot of guys I know of all ages, guys from high school all the way on up into their 50s. One guy that I know is a huge fan. I don't want to it's just three of us, and it's getting a little sweaty in here already, so I won't get on my knees too much. But it's not an exaggeration to say that you're changing people's lives. So thank you, and keep it up. I mean,
appreciate it, man.
It's had a great effect on me personally. So thank you.
Thanks, brother. Thanks for listening. Thanks, guys. And that wraps up the conversation. And thanks for listening, and thanks to Darryl Cooper and Daniele Bolelli for organizing that discussion. And I look forward to having some more of those types of conversations in the future about history and about human nature and about leadership. And in the meantime, Echo.
Yes.
Speaking of leadership, if people want to lead themselves down the right path.
The path, yes.
Do you have any maybe recommendations for them?
Sure. Of course I do. So, we're all working out, right?
Mm-hmm. Pretty
Still,
much, yeah.
Every day.
Yeah.
You work out every day.
Yeah. Although I got sick.
Yeah.
Straight up.
Gotta rest.
Yeah. Flu.
Yeah.
You know what that is?
Yeah, man. I hear bad things.
Yeah.
Man.
No,
Gotta
it
get
wasn't
the flu
good.
shot.
Yeah, I didn't get that.
Yeah, man. I hear mixed reviews about the whole flu deal.
Yeah.
Either way, you're obviously better. You seem better.
Well, I'm better.
Which is good. Because now you can get back to working out. And when you get back to working out, you still want to maintain your joints. Sick or not sick, maintain your joints. That's what I think. I think everyone would agree with me on that one. And the way you maintain your joints is to take joint supplements like krill oil. Jocko Super Krill Oil, that's the good one. Jocko supplements, that's right. Also, a good supplement called Joint Warfare. Take those every single day, man. Every single day. No breaks.
sure.
No slack.
No slack.
Unless you run out. But here's the thing. You don't have to run out anymore. You get the subscription situation. every 30 days, 60 days, whatever, however much you use or whatever. You got to estimate, and then boom, you do your subscription. You get one in the mail every month. Never run out. Maintain the joints. Important. More important than your power mass gainer 5,000. I think so. You think so too?
Yeah.
Also, you want some cognitive enhancements, which you do. You do. You totally do. Brothers, like, cell phone signals and, pollutants from cars. It messes up your brain sometimes. You need some cognitive enhancement. Jocko has another supplement called Discipline. It's a pre-mission. Physical enhancement, cognitive enhancement, all in one. Boom. And it tastes good. Boom. Take it. I would say take that every day. You take it before stuff. So you call it a pre-mission, indicates you take it before you do something where you're going to use
before I do a mission.
Yeah.
That mission could be going to work with a company. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, I'm going to need to be on my A game mentally because we're solving problems. Sure. We're digging into leadership situations. We're finding out what's going on. A game has got to come. Also, jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
But the people always say, well, I thought you didn't take pre-workouts. And I don't. Not for a workout.
Oh, yeah.
For the workout. So I might do that 1 out of every 10 workouts. Maybe even 1 out of 20. Where I take some kind of a pre-workout.
Yeah.
It's because when I wake up in the morning, I'm not hungry. Yeah. I'm not even thirsty. I drink water, but I'm not like, I don't feel the need for something to jack me up during the workout.
Yeah.
No, I'm just going to go get it.
Yeah. And you don't really drink coffee, so you don't even have that situation.
Yeah, no, I don't like coffee.
Yeah, man.
People ask why I don't like coffee. I don't like the taste of it. It tastes horrible.
Yeah, so what that did is it made you, or it didn't allow you to get into the coffee system, because that's really what it is.
Yeah,
I hate to call it.
And everyone says it's an acquired taste. My question is, when something's an acquired taste, how many times do you have to drink something that sucks before you're like, okay, I like this now?
Before you acquire that thing. Yeah, man. And
there wasn't, to me, it wasn't like, hey, if I can get this, if I can start liking this, I'll be stronger.
Yeah,
that wasn't going to happen. It was like, hey, if I start liking this, then I'll spend $4 a day at a coffee store.
Yeah.
No, not happening.
Well, usually, like beer, right? When you first drink beer, typically for most people,
taste.
Yeah,
that's
you
what
don't
everything
like it.
is. I'm not good with any acquired taste.
No, not chocolate milk. Chocolate milk right off the bat.
Everyone
it's not
loves
acquired,
it, right? It's just
immediately
boom.
acquired. Yeah.
Wait till you try the milk.
That's not acquired taste.
No,
that's
it's
a
so
straight
good.
up
It's
direct
ridiculous.
Yeah, and that's probably why you make things taste good, because you're not down for the whole acquired situation.
Don't like the acquired taste.
Well, okay, so like beer, coffee is the same deal, because there's a benefit beyond just the taste. So beer is like, yeah, you get drunk or whatever, and people like that. But it's like, dang, the beer is kind of this barrier. Like, I wish it tasted better, blah, blah, blah. That's why they do Jell-O shots, They taste good. Anyway, so after a while, you're like, you know what? I'll endure the taste to get.
But then eventually you like the taste.
You end up liking the taste because you can kind of recognize certain, there's all kinds of reasons. Same thing with coffee. You kind of start to like the taste because initially, you want to get the boost, the caffeine boost.
Well, the good thing is with the products that we make, they're not acquired taste. They just taste good.
Direct, delicious.
You can just get
taste.
after it from the get-go.
Yeah, and this Discipline pre-mission is no exception. Tastes good. It's like a lemon lime. Is that the official flavor?
That's the official
lemon lime.
Official, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one because that's like a real broad. Like most people gonna like the lemon lime.
Yeah.
Like it takes a weirdo to not like lemon lime.
No, you gotta have some.
Not that that's a bad thing.
You gotta have issues.
Yeah, you're probably missed. But nonetheless, it does taste good. I will agree with that. And I think it's one of those deals where you can just take it, even if it's not right before some stuff.
Yeah, I just drink it. Sometimes I'm just straight up want something sweet.
Just
straight up.
It's all good for your brain and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Is that a lack of discipline? I want something sweet.
No, because unless it's like a bad thing. No. Because you think about it, you want to break it down. What makes something a lack of discipline? It's like when you slip, when it's like goes beyond your intentions, right? If you intend to do something, but then it's like, my immediate payoff is going to kind of get in the way or whatever, then that's
So that's why it's okay to be like, tomorrow I'm going to have a mint chocolate chip milkshake.
Yeah, it kind of is.
Not today. tomorrow.
But if that deviated from your original whole plan, then it's lack of discipline. Like if you're like, oh, I'm really craving a shake. I won't have it today, but I'll have it tomorrow, even though the plan doesn't entail you having it tomorrow. Then it's like a lack of discipline, just on a bigger scale, I guess, or more long longevity scale.
Check.
Nonetheless, discipline. It's good. Tastes good.
Feels good.
It won't take discipline to take discipline.
No,
is what I'm saying.
That's a good point.
Like, because it's gonna taste good. It's gonna make your. You know what it is when you take it. I was talking to Jade about this. It's like you know how like when you're searching for a word, you know when you're trying to explain something and like let's say I don't know, your brain is off, you're hungover, or you didn't get enough sleep, I don't know, whatever, and you're searching, oh, what's that word again? Or you forget someone's name, like your friend or something like this. It's almost like
the discipline is going to connect those dots for you.
Yeah, and this is what it feels like. You know you ever played the lottery? Like Powerball or something.
Not really.
Well, you ever seen
on
the news how they get the balls? Yeah, it's like this big round cage that they spin, and all the balls fly around in there, and then they just kind of one randomly comes into the little chute there. That's what it feels like. It's like that's all the words. That's your brain, and that's all the words. And man, that correct words just is not coming in there. You know what I mean? But the discipline shoots the right words in there, like one speed, boom, 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 boom.
Dang.
See what I'm saying? That's what it feels like.
Take discipline, win the lottery.
Yep.
Check.
Yep, same exact thing. Nonetheless, it's good. Get that at originmain.com. That's where you can get all this stuff. Origin Labs, they're producing it, by the truckload for us. Also on originmain.com. There's some good geese on there. Really good geese. Only geese I'm wearing now. Forever, straight up. And they're made in America, by the way. The cotton's made in America, sewn in America. Loom is not a verb.
Woven.
Woven.
Yes.
With looms.
The wrong word lottery just popped in there. Loomed.
Yeah,
you just loomed into a verb. Maybe that's proactive.
Yeah,
I'm creating words.
Yeah, no, it's true. See?
Hey,
Boom.
when Shakespeare made up a word, everyone was cool with it.
Bruh,
all of a sudden, that came cool.
And you can make words.
Yeah.
All you need is people to sign up.
That's
so
what's
you
good
know
about
what?
English.
The cotton is straight up loomed in America, and so assembled in America. They're made in America straight up. The geese. There's rash guards on there, compression gear, if you will, pants and tops.
By the way, it's not just cotton, That's why it's so different.
Yeah.
Because it's a hybrid blend.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just cotton.
All right.
So, yeah, there's that's why the material dries quicker. That's why it's antimicrobial.
Yeah.
That's why it doesn't smell bad.
Yeah.
That's why it dries out quick. That's why it's lighter, because it's made from the get-go for jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and that is a big deal. If you take jiu-jitsu and you even just pay even that much attention to that kind of stuff, it makes a difference.
Yeah.
And then try to go back to your old gi, you can be like, bro, why did I even do that? Go back to my origin gi. Sticking with it. That's why I'm sticking with it. Also, speaking of jiu-jitsu, there's an immersion camp coming up.
Mm-hmm.
August 26th through September 2nd. There's two sessions, right? Early, late session. I'm going. Jocko, you going?
I am going.
Yeah.
I'm going to both sessions.
Poor Jocko was so mad he couldn't participate last time.
Yeah, it hurt rib.
Yeah. It was almost like something was there just bothering you the whole time. Just a little bit.
Oh, no. A lot.
Yeah.
Well,
like you didn't show it that much, but you could tell.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say I let it get to me.
Right,
but
right.
it definitely bothered me.
It would show
Yeah.
every once in a while. Nonetheless, Jocko will be there in full effect this time. And, yeah, I'll be there. And, we can immerse ourselves in jiu-jitsu. That's what it is. It's not a boot camp.
August 26th through September 2nd.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Come
in
on
Origin. Yeah. So go to originmain.com. You can look at literally all of these
It's
things.
immersion. It's jiu-jitsu immersion camp. You can only do jiu-jitsu. How many hours a day can you do jiu-jitsu?
What, in real life or in the camp?
In the camp and in real life.
I guess technically in the camp you can do it for 24 hours, really.
Yeah, okay. Well,
technically, if you really want.
okay, now
but
realistically, what do you think? Someone does 2 or 3 hours in the morning and 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon? Or 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon, 2 hours in the evening? 6 hours a day?
Yeah.
You'll be sore.
Yeah, if
Oh,
you're
you'll be feeling
getting
that.
after it, which you're not obligated to do, but that's the freedom you have, and that's how good it is.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, man. So you know how, like, let's say you, for example,
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, I want to roll 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours afternoon, 2 hours at night. But here's the thing. You can't just decide to roll. You got to roll with somebody. Otherwise, you're just rolling by yourself. So that's a problem in the real world. Not everyone, but, Brad, this camp,
There'll be someone
more,
to roll.
yeah, every single time. Plenty of people, by the way. All levels. Boom. So, yeah, get some. Even if you've never done jiu-jitsu ever, still go and learn some jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Get off to
It's a good way to learn.
Hit the ground running.
Immersion. Well, that's the best way to learn.
Yeah, fully. So, yeah, originmain.com. Look at all this stuff and,
Dave Burke's coming, by the way.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that
Mr. Immersion Jiu-Jitsu.
Anytime Dave Burke calls me, I see his name pop on my phone. It's like, every once in a while you'll run into that guy who kind of gives you that feeling like, Dave Burke's calling me.
Good deal, Dave.
Yeah, good deal, Dave. It kind of like brightens your day a little bit.
I don't know who else is coming. I don't know if JP's going to come or Leif.
Yeah.
Got to check the schedules.
Yeah.
Got to block the EF team's schedules.
Yeah, that'd be good if both of them come. I've been noticing they've been getting their train on.
They're trying to train.
Yeah, man, that's good. Also, speaking of training, if you want some good fitness gear, mix up the workout, get more creative with the workout, with the movements and equipment, go to onnit.com/Jocko. Get yourself some Primal bells. I highly recommend.
By the way, someone hit me up because we had this conversation last time. You said that my workouts were boring.
Yeah.
And someone kind of sided with me, just so you know.
Cool.
Because I said the workouts can be boring if you're boring.
Right. Yeah, but the thing is we did conclude that. Some
people sided with me.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Well, they're right, and straight up you're right. Because I think we kind of concluded that too, where, yeah, if you're boring or if you intentionally make it boring, yeah, it's boring. That's how. In fact, the boredom and the boringness of the workout can be part of a certain type of training. It's like a mental endurance training.
Yeah.
So it's a whole big thing, and I was irresponsible to accuse.
Do you ever do a workout where you just do one movement
the whole time?
The whole time?
No.
Oh yeah.
Wait.
There is some mental.
Not a full workout.
There's some sort of there's definitely something to that mentally.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna do 500 repetitions of whatever this is.
Actually, yes, I have. It was snatch. So
kettlebell snatch.
Here's the thing, though. It was I took
kettlebell
a
snatch.
No.
Barbell snatch.
Barbell, yeah.
Okay.
It was a CrossFit.
500 snatches. It
was.
That's no joke.
How many? I forget how many. It was a dumb amount. Put it that way. Well, at the time, I thought it was anyway. I forget how much. It was probably.
For you, it was probably
200.
20.
Yeah, 20 is already dumb. I think it was 200.
You got bored at F15.
Oh, bro.
You powered through those last 5 reps though. I'm gonna suck it up.
Mental fortitude. Focus. Yeah, did it. But that was it. That was the only thing. Super sore the next day.
Yeah.
But that's it. Yeah, snatch. But snatch is kind of a fun exercise, though. That's the thing.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, depends on what you mean by fun. But the movement is it's more dynamic than just a,
The thing with exercises like the snatch, if you're not focused, this one's real simple, but if you don't focus, box jump. If you let your mind wander during a box jump, next thing you know, you got a 8-inch savage scar on your shin.
Yeah, very true.
You ever near miss a box jump and it wakes you up? You're like, oh man, I wasn't paying attention. I almost paid the man on that one.
No. I don't do that much box jumps, but I used to. I used to box jump like a savage.
Check.
Just,
get back
just for
on
your own perfect.
Yeah, I'm super stoked that I know that now.
Nonetheless, there's some cool workout equipment gear on there. Boring workout or not, get creative. Boom, look on there. A lot of stuff. I was just on there not yesterday, the day before. Good website. Good info too, by the way. Onnit.com/Jocko. Good spot. Good way to support. Also, when you get these books, I think I'm redesigning the website.
Good.
I think so. I think it's old.
Okay.
Old looking.
Well, now there's people that'll be anticipating this for the next year while you try and get around to it.
Bro, the website was old looking since day one, by the way. Yeah. So, nonetheless. Anyway, back to the point. When you get any of the books that we review, including Jocko's actual books, Way the Warrior Kid, Extreme Ownership, The Field Manual, all these books, look, I'm listed on the website. And the books are listed by episode in the books section. You just click through there when you get them. Boom, good way to support. Takes to Amazon Prime, 1-day shipping. Boom, it's good way to support too. But yeah, get them through there. Good way to support. Also, subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. Seems obvious, I know. But some people haven't subscribed, and they're not obligated to. But if you do want to support, subscribe. It's a good way. Also on YouTube. When I say subscribe, I'm talking iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, all that stuff. And YouTube. So don't exclude YouTube, the video version of this podcast.
Which you've been pretty motivated on lately.
We'll say active, sure. I don't count on motivation.
That's
you know
good.
what I'm saying? I try to stick with the discipline.
Trying to lure you in right there.
Yep, I see what you did there. Nonetheless, I am disciplined with it, but I am motivated too because, I understand the value of excerpts now. Someone emailed me the other day, hey, this excerpt of not joining the military or something about regretting not joining the military. This is what he did. I think he had like a medical thing where it's like, he couldn't pass or whatever, but he still could do work for the military in other departments. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
so
he went and he became like an electronics technician for the military, even though he wasn't in the military.
Yeah.
Still served.
Yeah, see what I'm saying? So like those little excerpts can kind of offer this info, whether it be advice or just spark other questions in people. Maybe they wouldn't have got it. Maybe they missed that episode. Or maybe they just weren't interested in listening to the whole
Speaking of missing that episode, somebody made a really funny meme that it showed. It didn't show you making an excerpt, but it showed like someone discovering an excerpt and like, wow, this is awesome. And then it said, oh, no episode number attached to this excerpt. So meaning, hey, glad I got the excerpt. Now where can I find this? In the future, we may want to add the episode number in there.
Yeah. So
did you know that there was a big meme war?
No,
it was on the news.
Meme war.
I guess, and I can't really follow it 100% because it was all in Reddit.
Sure.
But I read an article about there was like a legit meme war.
What's a meme war though?
Well, a meme war is different memes going back and forth at each other. But there was a meme war, and I've seen a funny. Somebody asked me one time. They had a ball cap. You ever seen the ball caps that say, Vietnam War veteran or Afghanistan Operation Iraqi Freedom War veteran or something like that? Someone wrote me or sent me a picture and said, Is it offensive for me to wear this hat? And the hat said, survivor of the meme war. And it looked like a legit veteran's hat. And I kind of was like, no, man, as far as I'm concerned, you're good.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know what you've been through on the meme wars.
I don't know what the meme war is. I will. I'm going to look into it.
Yeah, there's a meme war on Reddit.
Yeah, it sounds
apparently it had to do with sequels. I can't say the whole. I don't understand it well enough, but I understand it well enough to laugh and think it's funny.
I think it's very compelling. 100%. Meme war. Those memes are funny, man.
Yeah,
they get
memes
real
are
funny. People are creative. That's good. That's a good thing. Nonetheless, excerpts. I do put the episode on there, by the way. Here's the thing: when you go to YouTube,
you got to go to the read more or something.
You got to click on read more. That's the thing. Yeah. So it looks like.
By the way, I was reading YouTube comments the other day.
Oh dang! It's bold. That's a wacky wild adventure
but
right there.
Someone wrote, "Why are we even making these comments? Jocko and Echo don't even read them." Guess what?
Jocko reads them.
I read them.
Dang! There you go.
Meme war was going on. I had to do something.
Take some kind of action.
Yeah.
Let's just read the comments. Actually, that makes sense, bro. Because here's the thing about YouTube comments. This isn't new, by the way. So a lot of people know this already. Where YouTube comments seem to be, maybe there's probably other forums and stuff where they get worse, but YouTube has the most potential for terrible comments, and for no reason too. So,
well, isn't it because it's completely unregulated?
It can
right?
be, yeah.
Well, in other words, on a Facebook comment or on a Twitter comment, generally it's you're a human being.
Yeah.
On YouTube, you're just a
you
nameless,
can create an account pretty easy and they can't really think. Yeah, so it's anonymous. It's close to anonymous. So the key is, or the kind of the thing, the result is like if you're gonna read YouTube comments on your content or whatever, you gotta have thick skin and real thick skin because it's like they're trying to hurt your feelings, like they're trying.
I think they're hilarious.
They are.
Yeah.
They can be. And that's the thing. People are creative. And creativity is a really broad thing. And people, when they use creativity to try to get you, they can if you don't have thick skin. And I've experienced this kid. Remember when I used to do the Hinato show? Yeah. Right? So that's anytime you're doing like comedy stuff or I don't know, like any kind of like creative stuff, to me, your stuff now is really hard to be like, that sucks, and try to so it's kind of easy. I think we kind of have it easy in that way, because if someone's like, Jocko's so stupid or something like that, they make themselves look dumb because it's so obviously not stupid. But when you do like a comedy thing, well, to me anyway, I don't know. So when you do like a comedy thing or, something like that, it's something of the nature of Hinato show or bikini girls, doing lightsaber fights or something like that. People are going to tear that stuff apart. And the stuff they say is like, dang, I didn't even think about that. But now I'm kind of have a complex about my videos now, kind of thing. So that's how I started on YouTube, by the way. So I was like kind of new to YouTube and putting stuff on when it got an audience. Shredded. Got shredded, man.
Hurt your feelings.
And here's the thing, too.
You don't really have thick skin.
I would say.
Then at that time, it was thinner.
In the beginning, I don't think anyone really has thick skin unless they have the heads up going in. So... And here's the weird thing. It's like most people, they like it because they're fans of Hinato or something like that. But then when one guy now, after like 50 comments of like, haha, this guy's hilarious. Oh, this video is funny or whatever. One guy says it sucks. You're like, it sucks. I know it's, it gets to you. It's weird how that works. Nonetheless, the point is, you reading the YouTube comments is a wacky, wild, bold adventure. And I respect you for going on that adventure. Nonetheless, Jocko reads them. So, boom, question answered, right? Was it a question? Or did he say they don't read?
It was a statement.
Saying straight up they don't read.
I don't know why we're even writing anything. Jocko and Echo don't even read these comments.
Meanwhile, he wrote that.
I was borderline, like maybe I should just respond for once and say, hey,
what up?
I'm right here.
Reading, in the darkness. They came out of the darkness for once. Yeah, man, that's good. Maybe. That's another way to engage, right? I just figured like YouTube comments is kind of, I don't know. It's not as authentic,
Yeah, well, it's random. What is anonymous?
Yeah, a lot of
stuff, which is kind of a bummer.
Yeah. Nonetheless, if you want, subscribe to the YouTube channel for the video version and excerpts, which are valuable. I've come to know the value of excerpts, and some enhanced excerpts. Call them enhanced. Put some music on there, some text, kinetic typography. You know what that is? Does that sound familiar?
Well, kinetic, I know what that means, and typography, I know what that means. So I'm putting it together. Yeah,
man. So when you put it on a video, it's like the words kind of get animated on there. Yeah. That's what it's called.
Yeah, you like that stuff. I like it too.
It does. It becomes kind of captivating. Some people are really good at it, man. They do it anyway. Nonetheless, cool videos on there. If you want to subscribe. Good way to support. Also, Jocko has a store. It's called JockoStore.com. It's called JockoStore. The website is JockoStore.com. That's what I'm saying. That's where you can get your shirts. Same shirt Jocko wears every day. The Victory MMA shirt. You can get it there. Boom. Also, discipline equals freedom. Get after it. Some bumper stickers on there. Decals on there. Hoodies on there. Women's stuff on there. Patches. Velcro.
Beanies? I haven't seen any beanies. We're waiting for winter
Rash
now.
guards are on there.
Cashmere blend directly picked from the high mountains of Bulgaria.
Sure. Well, the good news about the beanies is that they're en route.
Sure.
That's not even an English word. They're on the way. Straight up, put in the order. We came down to all the stuff, and boom, they're on the way, man. Straight up.
Good to hear. Yeah. Well, Christmas is on the way.
I'm just they're
right.
On the way. It'll be worth the wait, I think, in my opinion. Nonetheless, it's called JockoStore.com. If you want something, get something. Check out the stuff. If you like it, get something. Good way to support. Also, Psychological Warfare. If you don't know what that is, it's an album on iTunes and Stitcher and wherever you can buy MP3s. It's an album, Jocko album, with tracks, Jocko tracks.
I don't think you can buy MP3s on Stitcher, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Then don't go to Stitcher then for it. Go to Amazon Music or something like that, or Google Play, or, wherever else you can get them. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a track with Jocko helping you. Okay, when you go on your path, you have moments of weakness. We all do. All of us do. Even Jocko. I think. But when I have a moment of weakness, if Jocko's there to be like, hey, look, not yell. I don't want Jocko yelling at me. I don't want anyone yelling, really. Some people do. I get it. I respect. But personally, and a lot of us don't want Jocko yelling at us.
No need to yell.
No need, right?
Yeah. A yell is not impactful.
Yeah.
Well, it's a short impact.
Yeah,
I'd rather have a long impact.
Yeah, and then the yelling is kind
rather
of
have
like
something pragmatic telling me like, oh, here's an actual reason why I should not miss this workout.
Yep, and that's exactly
or why
what
I
it
should
is.
not eat this donut.
Exactly right. That's exactly what it is.
So one of my favorite Twitter things of all time is that little girl from Australia imitating me saying sugar-coated lies.
Yeah, that was good. 100% good, yes.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Notice you weren't yelling on that one.
No, she kind of made it. It's funny, the way she heard it was almost like yelling. Like
right.
she goes, these are sugar-coated lies.
Yeah. Actually, that is kind of how you said it.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Nonetheless, it's practical. Jocko telling you practically and pragmatically why you shouldn't skip the workout, why you shouldn't, or why procrastination kills you. So it's like you'll be like, oh, it's almost like you gain a deeper understanding of the potential weakness and you can get past it. Works. 100% success rate in my experience.
Check. Well, also you've got, if you want, you can get some Jocko white tea. And you know what? Sure, it tastes good. Sure, it's got antioxidants in it. But let's face it, there's no other drink that's guaranteeing an 8,000-pound deadlift. No other drink.
Not that I know of, no.
So you get some Jocko white tea, get an 8,000-pound deadlift. Check. Next question. A lot of people do all kinds of working out. They try try the triple complex. They come up with these big plans. Just drink Jocko white tea. You're there.
Yep.
No need to even play around.
Yep.
Check. Books. Way the Warrior Kid. We talk about staying on the path. What's the path? A lot of people are looking for the path. But what if someone could show you the path? Well, the fact is the path can be found, and it's simply and clearly put forward to you in the Way of the Warrior Kid books, of which there are 2. And they will put kids on the right path. This is the book everyone wishes they had when they were kids. Everyone that's read it has said to me, oh, I wish I had this when I was a kid. I'm like, yeah, me too.
Me too.
I didn't have it. Had to just kind of wander around trying to figure out where the path is. But no, you don't need to have that happen. So a lot of the path is covered in book 1, but now book 2 is coming out, Way of the Warrior Kid 2. It's called Marc's Mission. More lessons learned. Controlling your temper, saving money, how to get people to stop making fun of you. That's important to know as a little kid, right? Controlling fear of failure. Because a lot of kids, you don't think of this. When you think of fear of failure, you think of like an adult that's saying, oh, I don't really know if I want to step out. Man, that guy's afraid of failure. Mm-hmm. Like that's for kids even more so. Kids don't even want to try something because they're afraid they're going to look bad.
Yeah.
I remember my daughter when she was 13, my oldest daughter, she was 13 years old, and she was kind of interested in something. I was like, well, why don't you, try it? She's like, I'm too old to start. She's 13. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So how do you get kids to come over that? Well, you introduce them to these books. Building a business. That's something that kids don't think about very often. They should be. They should be thinking about starting businesses, earning money when they're young, learning the value of money when they're young. They should absolutely be learning about. This book's going to make every kid better. It'll make them a warrior kid. So here's what you do. You pre-order the book now. That's my recommendation. Marc's Mission. Pre-order the book now. There's a couple reasons why. Number one, it's happened with the other books that I've come out with. If you don't order it pre-order, then guess what? You go to order and it's not out of stock. And then you're mad at me. Everyone's, oh, your supply and demand isn't working really well there, Jocko. Hey, okay, I'll take ownership of that. Guess what? Order the book and you'd have it. How's that? That's my recommendation. So if you order, the other thing that's good about it is if you order it, it spreads the word and more kids will hear about it because there's no big advertising. I just got a thing the other day from somebody. It was a social media. I think it was Twitter. You might want to check with I don't know what your marketing team's telling you. I'm like, hey, I don't have a marketing team over here. It's me and Echo. We're kicking it. So if you want to help spread the word, Order the book. It's due out April 24th. It's Way the Warrior Kid 2, Marc's Mission. And if you want to see an actual warrior kid in action, check out IrishOaksRanch.com. Aiden, he's a warrior kid. He's only 12 years old, but has his own business. Speaking of businesses, you can get his soap that he makes from goat milk.
Very good soap, by the way.
Yeah. It's got a good motto, too. The motto of the soap is, stay clean. Sounds simple, but you know what? There's a lot of layers there.
Yep.
Hey, don't forget the Discipline Equals Freedom field manual. Eating, thinking, fighting, working out, life. We're talking about life. Get the manual on how to live your life. The field manual, Discipline Equals Freedom. For the audio version of that, you can't find it on Audible because it's not there. The audio version of Discipline Equals Freedom field manual is on iTunes, Amazon Music, Google Play, other MP3 platforms as an album with tracks.
Yes,
don't you know? Also, Extreme Ownership, Combat Leadership for Business and Life. And on top of that, Leif Babin and I are bringing out the follow-on to Extreme Ownership. It's called The Dichotomy of Leadership. It's got knowledge and lessons learned from the battlefield and business and life. You can pre-order that book right now. Did you know that? You can pre-order it now. If you didn't know that, you can pre-order that book now. Comes out September 25th. Again, if you want to get the book when it comes out, order it now. Otherwise, it'll sell out and you'll be mad at me. Hey, I'm down. You can be mad at me. That's cool. For even more leadership, we have Echelon Front. That's my leadership and my leadership consulting company. Me, Leif Babin, JP Donnell, Dave Burke. You want us to come out to work with your team? Email info@echelonfront.com, or you can check out that website. And of course, there's the Muster, which is our leadership seminar. We're only doing two this year. Washington, D.C., May 17th and 18th. San Francisco, October 17th and 18th. Both are going to sell out. They're going to sell out. So get registered now at extremeownership.com. The entire Echelon Front team is going to be there. And no, we're not going to be in the green room. We're not going to be sitting back there drinking warm cups of milk. No. We'll be with you the whole time, interacting, answering questions. We'll be eating. We'll be talking. We'll be working out. Just basically getting after it, as they say.
Sure.
So come and get it at the Muster. And lastly, new announcement, roll call. Roll call 001, September 21st in Dallas, Texas. This is for current military, law enforcement, firefighters, paramedics, other first responders. One-day leadership seminar about leadership in a dynamic environment. So you can also sign up for that at extremeownership.com. We thank you all for your service and want to give you a little bit back. We look forward to seeing you there. And until we see you at the Muster or we see you at the roll call, if you have anything else for us, you can find us on the interwebs, on Twitter, on Instagram, and on the Fable Hockey. Echo is at Echo Charles, and I am at Jocko Willink. And thanks to everyone for listening, especially members of the armed forces that put it on the line every day to hold the line. And to the police and law enforcement, firefighters, EMTs, and other first responders, thanks for being there when we call on you. And to everyone else out there listening, don't just listen. Lead. Take charge. Take a stand. Raise your hand and raise your voice and say, I got this. Then take up your position on whatever battlefield you are on and get after it. So until next time, this is Echo and Jocko. Out.